Good evening and welcome to another exciting meeting of the Charlton Water and Sewer Commission. Tonight is August 20th, 2018. It's about 6:32 p.m. And as usual, we'll start. First I've got to ask if there's anyone here for Commissioners Forum, which I don't see any strangers in the audience. So we'll begin with paying bills as usual. Russ, what have you got for us?
So I guess we'll start with shall we start with the minutes of July 23rd, 2018? Make a motion to have the minutes accepted.
Got a motion, I hear a second.
I wasn't here.
You weren't here. Well, then I'll second it. Rob's not here either, so we got a motion and a second. I don't think there'll be too much discussion on it then.
Yep.
If that's the case, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That was our last meeting, I believe, right?
Yes, it was.
Actually, I was here for that. I was. So can I make a corrected motion?
Sure.
Can you add my name to the? Thank you.
Okay, so Alex doesn't need to sign them, and Jen doesn't need to sign them, so.
She can sign it.
I was here.
Yep. All right, now, with the warrants for review, make a motion to accept the following warrants as printed. Commissioner's salary, $400. Tie and bond, $1,030. LaForte Electric, $1,120. BETA services June 2nd through June 29th, $3,083.81. BETA, $2,339.42. Jeff Helgerson Excavating, $150. McClure Engineering, $1,776.25. Franklin Electric, $453. WB Mason, $6.57. WB Mason, $36.59. Jeff Helgerson Excavating, $1,668. LaForte Electric, $100. Mark Abrams, $6,000. Viola, July 2018, $37,335.97 for a total of $106,924.15.
Do I have a second on them?
Second.
Any discussion on any of them? Hearing none, I'll ask for a vote. Say aye, please, to accept them.
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. You got more for us?
Nope, that's it.
That's it.
Yep.
Well, if that's the case, we can move on to our scheduled appointments, which we're actually here early. Keith, come on up, take the hot seat here and talk about the monthly operating report for the month of July.
Good evening, everybody. With the cooler weather now, a little humidity out of the way. So we have the monthly operating report for July 2018. There was no issues with health and safety, no accidents. Monthly safety checklist is done. The training for the month of July was provided by J.J. Keller Online Services. The topic was on heat stress, how to recognize and treat. And under compliance, there were no NPDES permit exceedances in the month of July 2018. I've attached the plant performance report. The ammonia has come down now. We're at a 0.49, which is well below the permit limit of 1.42. So we've seen a change in the amount of ammonia. And then under the operations and maintenance activities of the treatment plant, the weekly and monthly maintenance checklists were completed. The weekly generator full load exercise were completed, there's no issues. And also all the monthly preventive maintenance work orders were completed. And as the season has been coming along, all the lawn mowing and trimming was completed at the treatment plant and pump stations. And we did receive one of the 2 electric motors for the high core unit, and it was installed, so the high core is up and running. We still have one temporary motor that's in place. We're waiting for the other explosion-proof hazardous area electric motor to come in. Once that's arrived, we will have that installed. And the 2-inch water line that supplies water to the high core screening unit washdown was cracked. So we shut down the water line, we repaired it, and the spray water's back online for the high core screening unit. And then our regular monthly critical alarm tests, there was no issues for the influent high flow alarm, Headworks building, high level sump pit, high core unit equipment failure, and EQ tanks high level float switches. Under pump station activities, all the pump station alarms were tested. Pump station weekly full load generator tests were completed. And the MTAs was sampled on July 4th and on July 16th, 2018. And the collection system activities, on July 16th, we had a grinder pump call at 6 Lakeview Road for a high level alarm. All the control lights were on, the wet well was full with thick grease, and the pump was tripped out. The pump was pulled and inspected, there were no obstructions found, but it continued to trip out. The pump was replaced and the system was tested, and it was okay. And this was an upgraded system previously, so we changed out the pump. On July 17th, we had a grinder pump call at 33 Hollywood Drive for a power failure alarm. The resident stated the alarm went off right after the thunder and lightning storm. We restored the power, but the system still would not operate. So Ed LaForte was called in to troubleshoot it and determine the system needed to be upgraded. And then on July 18th, we had a grinder pump call, 239 Sunset Drive for a power failure alarm. And again, same scenario, the resident stated the alarm went off right after the thunder and lightning storm. We restored the power, but the system would not operate. Excuse me. Ed LaForte was called in again to troubleshoot it, and was determined the system needed to be upgraded. On July 18th, also, we had a grinder pump call at 67 Sunset Drive for a high level alarm. The breaker was tripped, excuse me again. Breaker was tripped and would not reset. The pump was pulled and inspected. No obstructions were found. The pump was replaced and the system tested okay. And this was an original system. And then on July 29th, we had another grinder pump call at 171 Sunset Drive for a high level alarm. The pump would run a manual but not an auto. The float controls were tested and needed to be replaced. The float control was replaced and the system tested okay, and this also was an upgraded system. And for the month of July, we marked out 14 dig safes. And another request, I'm seeking approval from the commission for the semi-annual servicing of all the generators. The first quote was from Bigelow Electric for $3,770. The second quote was from Weld Power for $4,095. And the third quote, the third company, Reliable Generator Service, did not submit a quote. So to complete our annual service of all the generators, Bigelow Electric has the best quote for the work to be performed.
There's a copy of that quote attached in your binder after tab number 4.
So that'd be approved tonight, or is that gonna be voted on in another, meeting?
Anybody got any questions about it? Any reason why it shouldn't be approved tonight?
I believe this is consistent with what you approved previously with the same company. There's just a cost increase of $200 maybe.
Roughly, yes.
So
In that case, I'll look for motion to approve it.
I make a motion that we approve the quote from Bigelow Electric for $3,770 for the semi and annual servicing of all generators.
Second.
Any other discussion on this? Well, hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 I will schedule that
You're-
tomorrow when we get back in the
Yeah,
office.
you're ready to go. Okay,
Yep,
Keith.
it will be taken care of tomorrow.
Yep.
And then also, we still have the injector pump issue at Vine Street, and after talking with Ken at Bigelow Electric a few times, they don't know what they're going to get into when they remove the pump. So the worst-case scenario, he said to use what we had for North Main Street as the worst-case scenario, which would be the $5,710. So that would be the worst-case scenario after them taking it apart. We may not have the same issues that North Main Street had, but they could not just give an absolute quote, so they asked us to utilize the worst-case scenario. So right now, there is no generator there. What we do is we have talked to Helgerson, so if we had a power outage and we needed to have the wet well pumped out, they would come and back it out. So this does have to be taken care of at some point.
Do you have money in repairs for that?
Yes, we do.
So I make a motion that we approve not to exceed $5,710 from Bigelow Electric for the repair of the fuel injector pump at the Vine Street Pump Station.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any other discussion about it?
Peter, is this basically a diesel engine and you're just replacing the injector pump?
Yes, but it's a specific injector pump to keep the RPMs where it needs to be based on the load from the generator. So it's different than what you would get on a backhoe or excavator or something like that. It's specific for the generator only.
So it's the part that's specific, but
Yes, the injector
but as far
pump.
as changing it, because it's the same motor that would be like in a truck or a tractor.
Yes.
$2,300 for labor? It just seems high to me, that's all you can, unless the guy's coming from, out in Poughkeepsie, New York or
But
something.
that's also to rebuild the injector pump, if
Yeah,
it
rebuilding it
gets
as well.
rebuilt.
So that,
I believe that includes some of it as well. It says rebuild and reinstall injector pump. They're rebuilding the injectors, so they're gonna test them. So it's not just like, they're not just swapping the
so
injector
what
pump
would the
itself.
3,400 be for?
Parts to rebuild it, or if it's not able to be rebuilt, they'll order a new one.
What happened also with North Main Street is the shaft was damaged, so they had to have the shaft repaired for the injector pump and the housing. There was a part that was worn out, so that was the increase in the cost for rebuilding. They had to remachine the housing of the actual injector pump and then manufacture parts to fit the specs.
Isn't the injector pump like the size of a generator? Small little generator in your car?
Yes, but it's very specific to these. They're not kept on the shelf, maybe because these are 20 years old. They don't have one. It's a Standardine, I believe was the name of the
Right.
injector pump. And you can't, like I said, Bigelow, I called, what's the company in Oxford? The diesel place, D&W Diesel?
Yeah, which they do a lot of rebuilding.
Correct, they don't
Yeah.
carry these, it's a specific, if you want a new one, you have to call Standardine and order it, and they'll custom make it and ship it, which has a 3 to 4 week lead time. So
But this price is also based off what we paid in the past in North Main. It's
Correct.
not necessarily reflective.
It's not
of what-
necessarily
Right.
gonna cost that amount.
Yep.
It's all depending what's
So
found.
again, this is worst case, so.
See, where it comes along is all these injector pumps are specific to that one generator. That's why it's not a shelf item, or as you shared, sir, that, you know, it's
Proprietary.
like changing a
Yeah.
injector pump in
Okay.
your vehicle.
All right. Let it go.
Okay, we got a motion, and a second, any further discussion? If not, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 I'll pass.
You abstain?
I'll abstain, thank you.
Okay. Keith?
And then the few updates and additional notes, we are still continuing to see the high ammonia loadings over the weekend. We've been doing that additional sampling, and the ammonia is still coming in around 85 to 110 coming into the plant. And the MTAs have had some high numbers, 140, 135. So, you know, we do see some correlation in the collection system. And we did receive the hose for the bypass pump that we had tested previously, to rent hose to make sure it reaches the diversion structure up back. So that'll really help during high flow events. So now we're able to pump all the way up to the diversion structure, where the back side of the plant doesn't have the issues handling the flow. You know, it's always been the EQ tanks as the concern there. So now we have that capability, and everything's there when we need it. And then on August 1st, there was a SSO that occurred out of a sewer manhole on Old Worcester Road, which was upstream from the pump station. I'll provide all the information in August's MOR on this, just as this is just a notification for you. And also, again, the plant performance report's been attached. As you can see, the ammonia's come down quite a bit, 0.49 now. And also attached is the R&M budget, and the last page is what we had for expenses on that.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, Keith, what do you attribute the lower ammonia to?
Increase in water temperature. The
Okay.
biological process increases, becomes more rapid with the higher the temperature.
So that helps.
Yes, sir. Higher the temperature, the better.
Okay, anybody got anything else for Keith while he's here?
I do have one thing. I wrote it down as L. Stevens Road, but it's actually Stevens Park Road. The pump station on Stevens Park Road has been, I think, affected by weather and kind of wet groundwater, where the posts for the fence are all pushed up, the cement bollards are all pushed up for the fence post. The actual cement pads for the electric and for the pump are all pushed up and kind of at an angle and all distorted. So I think before we end up having that pump station go down and have an SSO
Right.
there, because of something happening, we should ask Veolia to take a look at it and try and understand what we need to do to fix it and kind of square it away. If you guys have time to drive by, all you have to do is look and you'll see the electrical panel is off kilter, probably 30 degrees one way and leaning back quite a bit. Like I said, the fence posts are all pushed out of the ground completely. You can see the cement balls on the bottom of them. And the pump station pad is also all kind of out of sorts, so,
Stevens Park Road, you're talking Dam Road?
yes.
Okay. It's been a rough month for Glen Echo, hasn't it? When you look, for Glen Echo, when you look at all the pumps that went down?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
the grinder
Sunset
pumps?
Drive, they're all in Glen Echo. All
That's
right.
where most of our
So
pumps
now,
are.
this pump station, so it's on Stevens Park Road.
It's
Whereabouts?
really small, about halfway.
About
Just-
halfway.
Yeah, before West Stevens' old
And-
house on the left.
Did this happen during the winter?
It's been progressive over the winters, it has to been, you know, as the frost, you know.
I think
Right,
there's
'cause
the
that's what you-
groundwater.
The groundwater comes off of that hill
Oh, big
behind
time.
it,
Yeah.
and it must just be saturated there, and when we get a frost, it just pops everything up, so. Again, there's no frost wall or anything there, it's just probably surface, just kind of ground mounted pads for it. And it's a real small pump station. There's not a lot to it, so there's a small, I don't know how big the pad is for the electric, but probably like
3
4
by 5.
Yeah, so there's not much there to keep it in place.
Just looking back at it, maybe all those homes should have been serviced with a pump, an individual pump for each one, rather than the pump station.
Like Lakeview?
Yeah, yeah, like the rest, most of the other lake roads.
Almost everyone on the low side is,
Yeah,
I believe. The high side, so going towards the dam. The left side's probably gravity into that line, which then
Right.
gravity feeds in. Everyone on the low side near the water probably has to pump up to that line.
so it
It's
looks
all the
like this.
houses in both directions go into that pump station, right?
The high side does, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yes. It probably feeds from both
Yeah.
ways and then pumps out to
If you'd
31.
like, I could take pictures and
I'll
provide
need
in
to
the
take
next
a look
month's
down.
report.
Like Peter just said, have you guys take a look at it, and come up with
Okay.
some type of game plan.
Yeah,
Sounds like
absolutely.
it's gonna be redone.
Unfortunately, yeah, before it gets too bad and all of a sudden, we're out of a pump station. Granted, there's probably only 20 homes on it, but it's still enough to give us troubles, so.
And I believe a few years ago, we had a severe I&I problem over there that was repaired. I
I'd have
thought
to-
we did,
Possibly, I'd have to
Yeah.
look it up.
because, and the pump station is on the lake side of the road,
No.
it's on the hillside.
Correct.
So it's getting hammered
Yes.
with the water coming out of the
Yeah,
hill.
and it's in a little low spot, so the
Right.
groundwater probably just kind of settles right there before it goes across the road.
Because the roads go like this. Oh, boy, okay.
So, again, I just wanted to bring it to your attention, and maybe if we can do something before winter sets in, it'd probably be beneficial.
Yes.
Great.
Anything else for Keith?
I'm good, Mr. Chairman.
We all set? Oh, thank you, Keith.
Thank you kindly, have a good evening.
Excuse me.
And
Yes, you
Thank
too.
you for the approvals, I'll get that scheduled tomorrow morning. Thanks.
Okay, next on the agenda, we don't have the people here, but I just want to know how you pronounce it, Cacciarone or Cacciarone?
Chatcheroni.
Cacciarone, okay. And
He's
then-
away, but his engineer should be here soon, shortly,
Yep.
to talk about what they have
Yeah,
planned.
we're just a little early. And I don't see Beta here really, so I don't know if you want to go ahead with the superintendent's report?
Sure.
Start it anyhow?
Yep. So that's in the back on tab 7. So Berry Corner Road, progress continues on the Berry Corner Road waterline extension. Again, when I wrote this, there was approximately 6,000 feet of 8-inch water main installed. Since then, they've made it up, all the way down, up Berry Corner Road to, what's that, number 10 Schoolhouse?
Yep.
That's completed. They've downsized it to 6-inch, and they're continuing to move up onto Ayers Road. On their way up there, they've passed some drainage that needs to be replaced that they didn't do, and a couple of hydrants that they left out because of the ledge that was in the way. So they hit ledge heading up towards Ayers Road, so they split the crew. So one crew can stay there and hammer the ledge on Berry Corner Road. Another crew went back further down Berry Corner to start doing that drainage and install a couple of the hydrants that they passed over and start doing service laterals. So Ludlow Construction seems to be doing pretty well. We've been having monthly progress meetings. I've been forwarding you the weekly progress reports for you to review. And again, the project seems to be going fairly smooth considering all the rain we've gotten and the rock that they're hitting. I think for quantities, the contract called for 11,000 cubic yards of ledge, of rock removal, and they're probably right about 500 or 600. But that rock removal also includes all of the service laterals. So even though they've got this many feet of water line in, they still have to do all the laterals to all the properties where they're gonna hit more ledge as well. And they still have to do the entire length of H Foot Road, which you know there's quite a bit of rock there as well.
How are they taking care of the rock? Are they just able to hammer it?
So far, they've just been hammering it, yes. I don't believe they've had to blast it all. So they've just been kind of taking their time and getting through it.
Has it been shaly?
Some of it has been, some of it looks like a big, nice piece of granite. So some of it's shaly, some of it is pretty thick, pretty dense, so.
Peter, is that contract, excuse me, I'll set, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I'm all set. I know.
Peter, our contract, is there a specific footage amount, or did they just give us a whole number?
No, it's
for ledge?
quantity bid, so it's per cubic yard they bid it. Estimated at 11,000 cubic yards. So they put a price, I don't know what the exact price is, but they put a dollar amount per cubic yard.
Without a not to exceed?
Well, again, they estimated at 11,000, so if they get to 11,000, they probably get to reopen that cost based on that.
Okay. All right. enough.
They get their unit pricing throughout on the cubic yardage, they go over,
If they go over,
right?
I'd have to read the contract.
Yeah,
I know
I'm
what
pretty-
happens if
I'm
it
pretty
goes
sure-
over.
I'm pretty
I-
sure that's the way it works. If they figured
We'd
500.
have to look at that line
Yeah,
to make a determination how they did it.
I'm pretty sure that's what I read when I went over it. Have they, any issues that you've heard of, noticed?
No, I mean, the residents have been, from what I've heard and what I've seen, there's been minimal complaints. Somehow, some lady ran into a pipe that was on the side of the road that was laid out and bent a tire. We told the resident to call Heather, and Heather told her to call the contractor, and the contractor took care of it. There were a couple complaints today from dirt. What they're doing is they're taking the spoils to Eleanor Lane, and they're screening there, and they're bringing the screen material back to backfill the trench with after. And there was some dirt and stuff and some debris, probably from the trucks, from the tires and stuff leaving where they're screening in the roadway today. So that's about the only complaint we've gotten. Other than that, it's been minimal complaints for traffic disturbance, minimal complaints for anything. The residents seem to be happy with what's going on and working around it.
You said they left out some hydrants due to ledge?
Just for timing, so they could keep doing the
So they hung
mains.
the T and everything?
Yes.
They're gonna, okay.
And as they're installing the lane, the line there, the corporation stops are already installed in the line, so they know where those are, so they don't have to put them in after,
They're pre-drilling all? Oh, wow.
pre-drilling and installing.
As long as they pass the pressure test, but.
Is there consideration given 10,
You'd have to
15
chase those
feet
down.
for a hydrant location if in fact there's like granite ledge to where is there someone on the site and said, fine, you can slide it 10 or 15 feet to the left or right? Has that happened?
The field adjustment has not happened yet.
Okay.
They did mislocate one by mistake. They took a tie off the wrong telephone pole, and they missed it by a couple 100 feet.
That's a,
So I think, in the email I got today from Kurt, the fire chief is asking them to kind of split the difference between that one and the next one and install an additional hydrant because of the miss.
Yeah, but what does that impact to the system for flushing?
It's as far as,
What was the hydrant's location based on flushing?
no. No, it's just every 500 feet.
Okay.
Is how it
If
seems to be.
you doing unidirectional flushing, a lot of times, you close valves.
Understood. I don't believe they spaced the hydrants for flushing purposes. It was just,
Okay.
if you look at, it's 500 feet on the plans. What they did say, though, the hydrant that was misplaced by mistake is at a higher point, so it's better off for flushing. That's where when they did do their, they've done some offline pressure tests on their own just to verify what they've been doing, and they used that to bleed off any air that was in the line, so. Again,
You want to take a break? And it looks like our 7:10 appointment is here. Cacciarone Properties at 9 Trolley Crossing Road. You want to come forward, please? And sit at the chair with the mics and bring your plans, and please start off by identifying yourself.
My name is Zachary Gless. I'm from Existing Grade Incorporated. I'm the engineer and the surveyor working with Nick Chatcheron on the site. And I know we're here today to present the proposal to extend the water line down Trolley Crossing to be able to service Mr. Chatcheron's property, which is 9 Trolley Crossing, as well as MTD Micromolding, which is the property right next door to it, which is number 15. And I think the main reason we're here today is I've been speaking with you, Mr. Bory, about the Title V, the flows, for the proposed flows for the site. And I know there's a little bit of concern over the number of doctors that would be there. Mr. Chatcheron has stated that he's going to only have 4 full-time doctors present at one time in that building, and that's what we're requesting our betterment fee difference between what was already paid previously and what we're going to be doing today.
excuse me for a second, could you just point to the subject property?
Yeah, the subject property is this at the end.
Thank you, just for the people at home.
Yep, absolutely. And then, so the project itself entails, and this is the east side, this is H. Putnam Road Extension. Currently, there's a capped line that comes in off of Route 20, and the proposal is to take that line and extend it with an 8-inch water main down what would be the south side of Charlie Crossing. Excuse me. Until we reach right in front of MTD Micromoldings, which is number 15, then we'll be crossing the road and then coming down to the end just past what would be west of 9 Charlie Crossing. We'll be putting a hydrant at the end and capping the line, and then part of the project would be tying in 9 Charlie Crossing with water as well as MTD Micromolding. And then as we're running down the line, each one of these lots will be serviced with a water line, but we'll be capping those and leaving it up to those owners to tie in on that side if they'd like to in the future.
Excuse me, so you're gonna run the laterals across the road, or you're just gonna leave a T in the line right on the sidewalk side there?
What we're proposing is to run them across the road and then capping them at the property line on their side.
So you'll dig across, or you're gonna tunnel under?
I believe they dig across.
Probably just dig on that road.
Because it's,
Yep.
pavement's fairly new, isn't it?
It is.
No,
Oh,
No, I don't think so.
it's chewed up there.
Yeah. They chip sealed it last year, I believe. I don't believe that road's in great
Okay,
shape.
yeah.
So I think their plan is to install it on, I guess that would be the southerly side of Trolley Crossing Road in the sidewalk near the Howlett Building. So it's
Okay.
off the road, so that
Correct,
way
yeah,
their
follow
highway
the-
would not require them to do full depth and full width repaving.
Okay.
Now, is Rain for Rent gonna come in off of this line as well?
I'm not sure if they're going to tie in, but I know that we are leaving a service to that lot.
When you say service, are you just 2-inch?
Correct.
So nothing is coming off of that for 6-inch other than the fire hydrant on the end?
Well, for Howlett, we got a 2-inch copper and then a 6-inch fire protection that will cap, and I believe
Oh,
each
you
one of
do?
these lots. Let me just double check to make sure I'm speaking correctly on that, and then Kamasi Masonry is going to get the same.
And then where you cross the road to the north side of Trolley Crossing Road, then you're gonna be on MTD's property, correct? So you're
That's
off the
correct. Right in
roadway
front of
again.
theirs, we'll be crossing, and then we'll be running it down the shoulder over there.
What is the overall length of main line to the capped end with the fire hydrant on the end past the property?
Yeah, hold on 1 second. Let me see if I can just, unfortunately, I don't have that with me.
If you add up the frontage and give me a rough estimate, that's fine.
So, Mr. Chair, the Charcheroni property is where WSP used to be, the engineering company, and he is in the process of renovating that into doctor's offices. They are currently connected to water and sewer. MTD, the building next to them, who also wants to connect, is also currently connected to water and sewer. However, it comes off of Route 20 at this time.
Yeah, I was
with a
gonna ask,
2-inch
where
copper
are the
line.
properties that came across underneath Route 20 just a
Yes.
few years ago?
Yes, so these are the two properties, however, that does not provide them with fire suppression. That's that's what's making this extension necessary, for them to go ahead and have that 6-inch fire suppression connection.
Okay.
One of the things I think that we need for more information is what the total usage is gonna be, so that's, again, when we present this to Southbridge, their concern is gonna be turnover. And if you're talking about 1,000 feet of 8-inch line, you have to make sure there's enough usage on that to make sure that there's turnover there.
And we do have that report that I am submitting to Ms. Blakely over at the
You have-
DPW. We've done a hydrologic analysis to show that we're getting the turnover that's required on their end
Okay.
for this line.
So I think that's one of the biggest concerns as far as the water goes. So again, they're looking, so this water line is kind of one piece of the pie of why they're here, is to talk about that. I know one of the issues that Nick brought up in my telephone discussions with him is talking about if he was to share the cost of installing this with a couple of abutters, to make sure that there's no betterment or any other type of fee that would be assessed to them, and also some of the other property owners, because I'm not sure if the person across the street from MTD and Mr. Charcheroni's property, is that in it?
Richard Care.
No, Kayer's,
Oh, he's further
he's on
down.
the same side, just further down from the WSP. So I believe those two vacant properties, Anathanas,
Correct.
Nicofanus.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I believe both of those vacant properties are very interested in what they can do with their property once this water line comes in as well. So, again, Mr. Charteroni was unable to come tonight. I thought it was important to have Zach here to give us just give you a very preliminary of what's happening, just to kind of, what you had for initial concerns, and I believe, Mr. Charteroni is going to be here at your next meeting, or his next availability, to talk about the next steps of what's going to take place. Chris McClure has been involved in this process a little bit earlier, so he is recusing himself from reviewing these plans on our behalf. So I need to talk to you about that, to see if you, who have you used in the past as a backup engineer to kind of review these plans on your behalf. If there's nobody, we can talk about who you'd like to use and kind of get that process going as well. So if Zach's submitting these to Southbridge DPW, then we can submit it to our engineer for his review or her review as well. And keep that going forward as far as the water goes. And
Sure, yep.
And kind of keep that going.
Did you ever come up with the total roughly?
That's just over 1,000 feet.
Just over 1,000?
That's
Okay.
correct.
Thank you.
The current 2-inch water service lines that take into the MT?
MTD, yeah,
MTD
micromoldings.
building, and also the one that's services your client's building is also a 2-inch. Will those be taken out of service?
They'll be abandoned, then we're gonna disconnect them at the curb stop and cap them down there, so that they will be fully abandoned.
Okay.
What's Southbridge's requirement for cutting caps?
I don't know, that's a very good question.
Just bring it up in case they may require to cut and cap the main.
Sure, and then I'll get that from Heather on what their full requirements are.
They wouldn't think about leaving that 2-inch in service to loop that water and take care of that water age. You have no issue, do you think, with the water age? Is that it?
I don't personally, but, I mean, again, I'll talk to Heather and see exactly what they need on that and make sure
Yeah.
that they're satisfied with whatever we're proposing.
It's only 2,600 gallons, it's not a lot of water.
And would it be yourself or the client you're working for, would they be talking with the other abutters along that line and seeing if there's interest in?
I know my client would probably address that side of it.
Okay.
So that's water and what they're proposing there and why, so. As far as sewer goes, that property had an initial Phase 2 sewer betterment of, I think it was $32,000 based on 840 gallons per day. Title V numbers for the square footage of office space they had. If you calculate the Title V numbers for the 4 doctors, it's 250 gallons per day per doctor, so it's 1,000 gallons per day. Based on how privilege fees have been done in the past, there's a 160 gallon difference that we could correlate into an EDU charge and assess a privilege fee based on that, based on the $8,200 per 1 EDU for privilege fees.
You're talking sewer now?
Yes.
You're
yes.
not talking water privilege?
No, I'm not talking water at this time.
Okay. And the sewer amount was calculated on the original building size
Correct, it
of
was.
11,000 square feet?
Yes, it was 75 gallons per day
And
for
that was
office space,
space.
per 1,000 cubic feet,
And
square feet.
Mr. Ciccarone is going to add how many more square feet to this building?
What he's gonna do, because currently this building is shaped like a U, he's gonna
Yeah.
close off the front of that and make that kind of a big waiting room for patients
Sure.
and whatnot, so it's probably gonna add about 5,000 square feet or so.
About 5,000?
Yep.
So that would take it from a 11,000 square foot office building up to a 16,000 square foot office building.
But the usage has
And
changed.
and it's going from
not-
office to a medical.
No,
It's not
I hear you
office
on that. That's
anymore.
the,
So we either kind of live by Title V or not.
How do you determine how many doctors can actually go in that space?
That's the
So
question
this
I've
kinda-
had with Nick, and I think it's a question we're gonna have to have. From my discussion, he said that he's gonna have 4 full-time doctors, and then there's gonna be traveling doctors that might be there 1 day a week or 2 days a week, or he's not sure yet. So
how's the
that,
part-time doctors equate to EDUs?
again, I wanted to, that's up for us to discuss and see what you're comfortable with, because I haven't really had a good answer yet to feel comfortable that 4 doctors is adequate based on the size of the building and what's gonna be taking place there. He did provide, there's documentation in here. Or not. He did have a letter, I must have not included it.
I have a copy of everything that I've sent you about his property in Shrewsbury.
Yes, he has a property in Shrewsbury that has similar size and similar numbers of doctors, and it shows actual flow. But again, we haven't really used actual flow for any type of betterment or privilege fee in the past, so I'm not sure we want to start using that now. It just comes down to if he has 2 or 3 part-time doctors, do we feel comfortable, and should we just make it 5 full-time doctors, so we carry 1,250 gallons per day instead of 1,000? I think that's more of a discussion we need to have with Mr. Charcheroni when he's here, so that I'm not going up there every month counting how many doctors are in the building, or it's just not a concern. We can just kind of find out what's fair for us and for him, and find out what that is, and just assess it and move forward, and know that it works.
I mean, I know that you saw with the information that I submitted, his Shrewsbury office, that averages out with those same amount of doctors to between 100 and 200 gallons per day is all that's being used at that facility of the same similar size.
Right.
That's why we're trying to go with the 4 doctors to say that 1,000 is definitely an overestimate of what this building is expected to use.
I understand that. Unfortunately, everything we've done in the past has been based on Title V numbers, and it's that safety factor is built into everything else that we've assessed from Phase 2 betterments almost to 16, 17 years ago moving forward, so.
Sure.
It's kind of hard to ask the commission to change that now, so. Unfortunately, I think we'll have to talk, when Nick comes back to talk about everything again, we can ask him what his level of comfort is and what your level of comfort is with 4 doctors versus 5, or come up with what we think a good gallon per day is based on Title V, and figure out what the privilege fee will be based on that, off of the original betterment that was based on 840 gallons per day. Unless you guys see something different that you want me to move in a different direction, that's kind of where I'm at with it.
Excuse me, that 840 would have been based off of 11,000 square feet and 75 gallons per 1,000?
That's correct.
Right. Okay. When you look at the Title V numbers that are in CMR 31015, 310, the numbers really are overstated. At least I know my personal experience. And the thing is I don't know what we do about it, especially when you bring back numbers from someone who's in the business, who has multiple units of these type of facilities, and you talk about the one in Shrewsbury that has 5 doctors?
I know he has much more than that are the part-times that come in and out. I
Right.
don't know how many full-time he actually
And
has
they're
there.
averaging 200 gallons a day.
Less than 200 gallons per day.
Less than 200. So Title V is missing it by what, 400%?
At least.
Yeah, yeah.
How did we work for the outpatient hospital at Harrington up here by,
I don't have their numbers.
no?
I know at
You know what
home,
I'm
I
talking
just
about?
did.
They have a mix of doctor's offices,
I
office
do, I know.
space. Just
They're-
wondering,
they're
we
better-
don't have to find them right now. Maybe that's something that for
I
the
believe it was
next
based,
meeting.
I looked at it, I don't know if I ever got through, I know what their what their privilege fee was, but I don't know if it was, based on I don't know how the calculation was done, so
Look
we can
into that
figure
and
that
see.
out.
I mean, me personally, you know, I don't want to hammer a new business coming into town. I love seeing a new business coming into town. We want to do everything we can help to get it water and sewer. And naturally, the business has to understand this is a business on this side of the table as well. But both sides coming together, making a good deal, that's what it should be all about. So, well, I guess I'll look forward to further conversations in the future with more information from us and yourself.
Sure.
Again, this was really just kind of get the initial information out there and make sure, again, there was no big surprises to come out. And when Mr. Charteroni's back, we'll have him here and talk about some more. And again, the water privilege fee is gonna be kind of the same question. It's be a little bit different based on his expense or incurred to install the line and how that affects it. And just have to move forward, see how it goes from there.
And you'll have the information from Southbridge on how
Yes,
they want
yeah,
you
I'm
to
getting all that
proceed by
information
point
over,
in
and
time.
then I'll bring that with us, kind of their summary and synopsis of what they need. And
If I may, Zach, it's Zach, right?
yes,
You're a professional engineer?
that's correct.
You're stamped?
I'm personally not stamped, but my father is, and I do all my work under him.
Okay, all right, and so he reviews all the work?
That's correct.
Okay, and then this is also being reviewed by Heather?
Yes,
Heather over at Southbridge?
Yes.
Okay.
yes.
Me personally, I think it's, these people have an obligation to their profession, not to the person they're working for. Again, I see no reason why we need to send this thing out any further, especially when we got Southbridge pouring all over it as well. Just my thought. I know we're gonna wait till next week, or next meeting,
Yeah.
when,
I mean, if that's consensus of the board, then, again, I think, Southbridge has their engineer on board, full-time. I don't know if he has a stamp or not. I'll find that out, though.
When would you be looking to do this project? When do you think you'd be starting?
I mean, I know that they're kind of itching at the bit to get going here. I don't know their exact projected start date, but I know it's
As soon as
sooner
possible?
rather than later.
Yeah.
He's already pulled the building permit, if I'm not mistaken.
So he's already starting working on the interior, and this is kind of the last, well, not the last piece, but this is one of the major components to
Good.
deal with.
Well, if you could, in your package next time, if he did pull the building permit, if you could supply us with that.
Sure.
That would be great. If you could give Peter a copy of that. That way, I'm sure we can tie a lot of our information to that, so.
Everybody's good?
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Zach.
Oh, one more question. Are we gonna have, are they gonna leave a copy of that for us, or?
I have a copy of that. in the
Oh, you have a
office.
copy, excellent. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Who's the gentleman in the audience? He's,
That's Peter Newton. He's here for our 7:30, if you want to move forward to that.
oh, from Beta?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't recognize him from Beta, I'm sorry. Yeah. Not sure you would recognize. Yeah, you're up then.
Hi, Peter, how are you?
Good evening, gentlemen, ma'am. My name is Peter Newton. I'm with Bristol Engineering Advisors, working under Bob Mackey at Beta on the Charlton Well Exploration Project. And I believe, Peter, I've been asked to come in and just talk about where we've been and some of our next steps.
Yes.
So, as most of you are probably aware, we did spend a long week out on the property, 2 sites, drilling a couple of exploratory wells for testing, for preliminary geologic evaluation purposes. So we took soil logs, we mapped the soils, the aquifer materials through which we drilled. And then at the second site, which is the southernmost one, we did at about 110 feet below ground, we finally found some actually pretty good gravel aquifer deposit material. That extended down to about 125 feet, maybe a little bit deeper than 127 feet, and then it became what we refer to as basal till, very dense. It was actually bone dry when we got down there. That's how impermeable this stuff is. Presumably that's sitting on top of bedrock, as it essentially always is. We weren't expecting to be drilling quite that deep. And despite setting a 4-inch well at that location, the pumping equipment that we had at the time was essentially unable to effectively lift the water 100 feet out of the well and then onto the ground. It could, but at a very low pumping rate, 15 gallons a minute. We did get some, I did have a transducer, an electronic data logger in one of the wells, and did get some data, which I've looked at, but unfortunately, it's just, because we pumped it for an hour, the pumping equipment was insufficient in capacity. We don't have great data on which to make a projection. And one thing I can say with certainty is what we have a confined aquifer. Now, the thing about a confined aquifer is, it's like, any of you guys are familiar with the flex hose, where you pump and it's, expands, and versus hard copper pipe. If you pressurize hard copper pipe and you lock it either end, put a pinhole in it, it'll drain for only a second. The pressure, there's not a lot of pressure stored. I mean, there's not a lot of volume stored in the pressure because the pressure builds up so quickly. In that elastic hose, you puncture that, it'll drain until the whole thing comes out. So an unconfined aquifer is more like that squiggly hose. What we are in here is a confined aquifer, so we don't have the drainage. We don't have a large volume of water above us, even though the height of the water in the well was about 70 feet. So we had 70 feet down to 125 feet, so we had 55 feet of water. We only can draw from the pressure in that water, and which drops very quickly. And I can pass this around, Peter. But so what we're seeing in the beginning part of it is a rapid drop in the water level, and then it stabilizes. And it goes pretty flat. Now that's the fact that it's very flat there is good news. Okay, it means that the water is coming into the well pretty rapidly. All right, so it's coming from elsewhere. The faucet is still on. What we don't know is where that ultimately goes to and how much water is there. If that aquifer materials deposit stick goes under Buffinville Reservoir, and Buffinville Reservoir is a source of recharge, then we have a very large amount of water available, and we think we can get it at a fairly high rate. If that's just sort of water that's percolated through the overlying soils at a very low rate, but for hundreds of years, and we pump it for a while, and that it basically drains that reservoir, and it takes hundreds of years for that to fill up, then we don't have a great water supply. So the materials are promising, but what we don't know is where that recharge is going to come from. And so, 1 hour of pumping, which is really what we were sort of planning on when we started this test, was just to pump it, just to kind of give it a quick rating to see what we could do. One, the equipment from the contractor provided was really insufficient because we didn't anticipate the depth. And 1 hour, when you pull water, you're pulling, 1 hour of pulling is only maybe 75 feet away, 100 feet away, maybe. So what we want to do is we want to run a similar test at a somewhat higher rate for a longer period of time, monitor, and see if we get similar data. The flat curve, if that flat curve stays flat, we're in good shape. If it suddenly starts to, we're looking at drawdown, so you flip it up. So if that curve then goes up like this, that means we've exhausted the reservoir of water and it won't be a valuable well site. The next phase that we've talked about with Peter and with DEP is the next big phase typically is a large diameter as well. It's an 8 to 12 inch diameter test well. In this site, that test well is going to be very expensive. Access is a challenge. The fact that we have to drill through 70 feet of soil just to get to water is expensive. We are, as you all know, we're restricted because of the Army Corps prohibition on the flood stage. So that forces us into the upper, up into the uplands, I guess. And I only have 5 though, I'm sorry. Southern one.
Peter, if I may, a
Yes,
quick
sir.
question. On the graph you just showed us, at what rate were you pumping?
That was 15 gallons a minute.
15 gallons a minute, so, and it leveled off at 70 feet. The
It
static level.
leveled off at about 8, it was at 70 feet static. When we pumped, it leveled off around 78 feet.
So it actually came up? Oh,
No,
70 feet down.
I'm sorry. In my mind, I'm thinking of drawdown. So
Okay,
the-
and so you ran it for an hour?
We ran it for an
15
hour.
gallons a minute.
Yeah.
And what was the recovery?
Well, actually, if you look at the far right end of that,
Yeah,
all those black dots that
That's-
are basically stacked, that's recovery. It recovered almost instantly, which is
Yeah.
great,
oh, yeah, it
which
is.
is great news. So
Right.
that in itself is a sign that,
Right, but if you're pumping it at 200 gallons a minute, then you're gonna find out what you got there.
right. But so here's the question that I guess the board needs to decide on.
Yes.
Do we spend $15,000, $16,000 to put a bigger pump and run it for do an 8-hour test, to decide whether we want to spend $100 and something thousand to put an 8-inch well and a bunch of additional monitoring points that DEP will require to do a full-on new source approval well pumping
Excuse me,
test?
an 8-inch well or a 12-inch well?
Either. I mean, typically they're 8s.
Yeah.
In this case, at the rate you guys are looking for, for a production well, it can be done where the test well becomes the production well, but you wouldn't want to use an 8-inch production well. You'd want to use a 12-inch production well for the rates you're looking at. So for the incremental additional cost to do a 12-inch well versus an 8-inch well, some communities elect to spend the money if they have a high degree of confidence that the testing is going to result.
Right, that's the key.
That's the key. And that's what honestly, I can't say that I have a high degree of confidence, we just don't know.
The,
That's the one they didn't
on a
get
high
anything out of.
yield pump
Yep,
for the hole that we presently have,
yep.
how many gallons a minute can you peak out at?
So-
Peak out at?
Yeah, so, the pump's nameplate data suggests 35 gallons a minute.
Okay.
We'll see.
Yep.
35 gallons a minute at 100 feet of pressure.
Static.
I'm not confident because there's a lot of friction loss in the
Yeah,
discharge line and things like that. So, I mean, if we get 30 gallons a minute. But the other part of this is that we'll be running it for a full 8-hour period. So we will get to see that cone of depression propagate out further.
And the
at least
recovery.
Yeah, so we'll see the response at the pumping well of that cone propagating out further, okay? If that cone hits a boundary where it can't get any more water, the drawdown levels, the water in the level in the well, instead of going like this, will suddenly start to drop.
Static, yeah.
If it hits someplace where it actually gets recharged, it'll either flatten out, and in some cases comes up a little bit. So over 8 hours is enough time to give us some level of confidence that it either is or it is not worth spending a lot of money to do the full.
Is DEP going to require a 24 or a 48-hour pump test in
When
the
we,
final?
5 to 10 days. That's why those tests are one of the reasons those tests are so expensive.
They want to do 5 to 10 days?
Yeah.
So
There's a lot more, they look at a lot more today than they did 40, 50 years ago, when it was just, can the well produce what you want it to produce, and
Right.
and what's the water quality? Now they're looking at what's the effect of pumping this well on the stream, or this brook, this plant, that butterfly. There's a lot of things we have to look at and evaluate, and they want these tests to be run for an extended period of time. And, that, they have to be manned 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
And have power, which is a generator on site, being fueled.
Yep.
It's quite an undertaking.
So this pump test we're proposing today, I thought was gonna be like a 3-day pump test, not just an 8-hour.
You're right.
Okay,
You're right. Sorry.
that's okay. I just,
Yeah.
so what we're
Yes.
proposing
Yeah.
is, again, I believe Peter's talked to a local well driller who can
Yeah.
get up there, install a pump at the correct depth that's required, and let that pump for, I think 3 days.
Yeah, well, it was 48 hours, I believe, and then 24 hours of recovery.
So you're going to run in 2 days?
Two full,
2 days?
two
Okay,
and
the
change.
recovery.
Yeah,
And again, from what I was told, I might not believe it, or, you know, I mean, the truth will be when it actually pumps, but possibly of getting 40 to 50 gallons per minute, which is right around, I think it's 70 gallons a day, if we can get that.
that's what, 50 gallons, then it would be a little over 70 gallons.
So at least that'll give us, instead of just saying, okay, we have some information now, do you wanna spend 90 or $100,000
You're hedging the bet.
on a 12-inch well? Let's spend
Right.
17 and see just get a little bit more information before we decide to do that. Luckily, as I reported in the previous meeting, the grant did get extended, and part of that grant getting extended, we got a fresh $200,000 for the Water Master Plan grant. It's not, so what was spent previously, which is probably right around $80,000 to $90,000, is kind of gone away. So what we have is a fresh $200,000. We probably have, I'm gonna say 80 to 90 of that committed already.
I would say.
If we do this 17,000, it will leave us possibly around $100,000 to, if this next step works, we can go ahead and talk about the 12-inch well, 8 or 12-inch well, what that cost will be to do that and do the other monitoring wells, and possibly try and get that done under the scope of this grant as well. But I think, again, we're gonna be bumping up against the time that we have our option on the property, so if we can get this done, we're gonna have to start talking to the property owner, or we're gonna have to start talking whether or not you wanna purchase the property as
Or
well.
we could buy an extension.
Correct,
on the
possibly,
option.
yes.
Yeah,
But again, it's
wide
just,
open.
we're gonna be bumping up against a couple milestones coming up here, so. It seems like, again, just keep taking small bites at the apple and just kinda peck away at it.
All right, now, if I may ask, is this pump that we're going to, if we choose to go that route, is this a pump that we're gonna rent, a pump that we're gonna purchase, or is this a pump that one of the companies we're doing business with has?
It's a pump that they will provide, they will own. They own,
They own,
or they will own.
so we'll be
Yeah.
renting it.
You'll be renting the pump and him, and the well driller, and I'll be on site as well with my equipment. Yep.
Okay, and you're saying is, if we move forward and then we're gonna do a 12-inch permanent well, we're still gonna have to do 2 8-inch wells?
No, it would either be an 8 or a 12. We cross that bridge when we come to it, but it's just one, but we have to put a bunch of other monitoring points in, the number of 8 additional monitoring points that we need to monitor water levels while we're pumping.
And those monitoring wells,
Yep.
and they're gonna be 8-inch monitoring
No,
wells?
those would be maybe even 1 inch.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
okay.
small diameter, but.
Just to get the static level?
That's right. Just to monitor, to get the static and then to monitor the pumping level.
Okay.
When the well's,
Got it.
monitoring how the aquifer responds during pumping, when it's being stressed by pumping. And then we plug all that data into the formula and make an estimate of what we think we can get.
Okay, we need a little more information.
Where
Yes.
will you discharge the water when pumping?
For this one, well, there's, it'd be nice to discharge it to the reservoir. We obviously would have to talk to the Corps about that. The reason that's nice is because the reservoir's so large compared to the volume, there's no issues with that water changing the water level, which could adversely complicate my analysis, my assessment. If we dump it on land near, it can recirculate down. However, for 48 or 60 hours, the materials above the productive materials are fairly tight. There's a lot of silts. Water won't percolate through them very fast, so if we have to do that, that's what we do. We can go back, to the east, and there's lots of, the plan you have there does not accurately reflect the topography out there.
No, I know it's
So,
up and down.
so we can,
There's a
we
lot
can
of-
find one of those, gullies and pump it into one of those gullies. You just have to put some hay bales and stuff to keep it from eroding and,
And not near anyone's residence.
No.
No,
no.
there's zero
Plenty of
residents in
distance
here.
away, and they're all
Right.
pitched towards the lakeside.
Yeah.
and-
Ideally, we get it into the lake as quick as possible.
Are some of
Whether
those
that's-
gullies from where they mined out gravel, or they just,
I don't think so.
Gullies.
I don't know, that's a geologic feature. We believe they're
Yeah.
what we call eskers, and where the glacier sat here, and
Yeah.
there were big tunnels in it, and as the glacier, as the meltwater ran through these tunnels, it left these deposits
Sure.
behind.
But where that knoll is, if you look to the, I guess that would be the east, it drops off probably, to the west, it drops off fairly quick and steep, probably 60 feet down to
Yeah,
the
it's
water.
about-
And to the east, there's a big valley right there as well that probably drops another, at least 40 feet.
Yeah.
It's kind of, it's neat to walk, it's neat to see, it's a neat little piece of property. For some reason, there's just a big knoll right there that sits up nice and high and dry. As far as your survey goes, when would you anticipate doing that so we get a positive?
Yeah, he's said later this week.
Okay.
And
And
planning to go out.
that's covered under our current amendment.
That's covered under the current
Correct,
amendment.
under
Yeah,
amendment
it's
two,
under
so
the-
that money's already there and accounted for under our current agreement.
That's right.
Great,
That's
so
right.
that way there we'll have an elevation certificate to make sure that we're far enough above the
That's right.
529.
Yeah, 529.
Great.
And then, but we will need to coordinate with Tim, just let him know he's coming out. I mean, he can hump his stuff in, but it would be nice if he could drive in.
Yes, either, or I can meet him there and make sure we get the gate open. Either way, just let me know when he plans on coming, we
Would
can
you
help
like to
with that.
follow along on the map, see where we're talking about? I know you have questions, is,
I'm very familiar with the area, I know
okay,
exactly where you're
you
talking.
know where the wells are located, and,
I do,
okay,
yes,
perfect.
thank you.
Okay.
And so when we're looking at the 2018 wells here, we're looking at the one that's up on top here and the one that's.
Yep.
Sure,
Here.
so the northerly one we'll call site one, and the southerly one we'll call site two.
Yep. Yeah, the
Okay.
northerly one, we drilled all the way down to Till, and we had nothing.
Okay, so it's the southerly one, all right.
Yes.
Yep.
The well that was identified back in, I don't know, 2000,
5?
wherever,
That's-
that was good for
7-05.
7-005. Okay, they projected that at 270,
I think I read
Gallons
three,
of it.
more than that.
more than,
Oh, I'm
more
sorry.
than-
Yes, yes, 380,000 gallons a day, so probably maybe 270 gallons per minute, yes,
Do you think the reservoir had an influence on
Yes.
that location?
definitely.
Probably. Yeah. I mean, that's not a bad
Not a
thing.
negative impact, but definitely an impact. Would it be,
Or an impact.
would it be groundwater under the influence of surface water? I don't know.
Because
But
that
it
would be,
It could be.
that would be a major problem if you go and develop it and spend all the money and they go, you're actually you're drinking water right out of the pond.
I think
It
we're.
wouldn't be the first.
Would be first, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
I'm gonna
and
make a
that's,
motion, we
unfortunately,
take the next step here.
Come to yearly shutdown of
Oh,
Buffalo.
for sure.
Algae's
And,
high, that's,
Yeah, again, in
Go to
initial
Walter.
discussions, we've talked about drawdown, we've talked about algicides, and
Right.
no one's had, DEP said that shouldn't be a concern for the wells that we're discussing. They've seen the locations we're proposing to drill, they've been involved, and no one's raised any of those red flags yet. I've asked them, and
So the number is 17.5, is that the budget number we're looking at?
in your packet, you'll see there's a proposed amendment number 3, and the total figure was $17,000.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we move forward on spending those dollars and making this the next step in our search for potable water.
I'll second it.
Any more discussion? Are we all set? Well, hearing none, I'll ask all those in favor of the motion to please say aye. Aye.
So the town administrator is gonna have to sign this, because she's the one who signed all the previous agreements. And I'll get it in front of the finance director of the town accountant, so she can sign off to make sure the funds are available. And we can start moving forward, because I know that pump had a lead time of a couple of weeks, correct?
Yep.
So,
Yep.
I think that'll be great.
and just one quick question. I know you have it broken down into 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah, so I provided the letter from Bob, I don't know if he sent that to you as well, that talked about he kind of laid out next steps for the area.
Okay.
And I see that in 3, so on page 2 of 3, under item 3, complete the work of new source approval processes for well BW-2. If you go under B, topographical survey, so that's not really part of that spending from above, the survey work, right?
Correct. correct.
Okay.
Yeah, what we have going on next week, or later this week, hopefully, is we need to verify that the location that we've drilled is above 259.
Yep.
And we also want to look at what its elevation is relative to the reservoir, so we can have a sense when we start to analyze our drawdown data, where is the pumping water level relative to the reservoir level. It's just useful information for me. So, so we have a couple of wells out there now that ought to be surveyed, but this in 3.3B, that'll be, when we have if we go forward, we have an 8 or a 12-inch pumping well plus another 8 monitoring points. All those monitoring points have to be surveyed to a datum, so the datum can make sense, we can
Sure.
get water.
My concern with B being in that sequence would be, I'd prefer to see not be entirely in that section, but further back in 2, so that we don't go to the level of spending and not know about a lot of the things in that area, and say, just the wetland or the habitat surveys. Be sure that we can spend the money instead of spending the money and then saying we can't spend the money, or we shouldn't have spent the money because the survey says we can't do it now. If you understand
Yeah,
what I'm
I
saying.
understand what you're saying. I guess
So-
I'm trying to think of a circumstance that would come up where the survey would rule something like that out. If we know the elevation, that we're clear from an elevation standpoint, we're out of the Army Corps' jurisdiction.
Could endangered species.
Could be endangered species, or could be, if we're
Would that-
within 30 feet or 50 feet of a wetland, although we're not, because we're so high above the ground.
Well, just,
Yeah, but I
I'd
know
like
what
to
you're
make
saying.
sure that's ruled
Yeah.
out beforehand, because naturally you don't wanna go and spend it.
You're right. Yeah.
Everything,
Yeah,
and
we
then
can-
find out that, well, we should have done the survey beforehand. Naturally, you can't pick up the wells that aren't in existence at that point.
I'll just,
But-
I'll ask Bob to just include that part in item 2.
Okay.
Just do
It
that.
may
top
take
of it.
maybe a little bit of reshuffling
Yep.
of things. If that number, the value is capped, switching the survey in, we may,
Oh, I understand.
some of the monitoring wells have to defer to the later rounds.
So in Bob's letter, item number 2 is approximately $100,000, and you feel that'll use up the rest of that $200,000 grant.
That's what that's what we estimate, yeah.
So I think that might be one of the reasons they pushed off the topographic survey, is they tried to get as many
Well,
monitoring wells.
yeah, I mean, the topo and that stuff, that's not, I mean, the wetland and habitat survey, I think those are easily ruled out. You go to the maps and the overlay maps, and you can figure that out without spending a lot of money,
Okay.
because it either exists or it doesn't. It's in that zone or it's not. And you have an elevation of 561, and it slopes off all the way down to lake.
Yeah.
We know that the wetland issue isn't necessarily present, so.
Right.
But just, I'm saying rule it out so we're not going backwards.
Yep.
That's all.
Yep. I'm sure we can revisit that.
Actually, the lake elevation changes week to week. Lately with the weather.
Sure.
It does, but we'll have a benchmark set there.
They use the dam to control they
Well-
control I don't think it changes that much. I believe the dam they use the spillway to keep it right where they want it. And, yeah.
We've seen it to where Oxford Road was closed
Yeah,
because the water went over the road.
yeah.
So- And the dam was doing what it was supposed to do, hold back water.
Right, I mean, what I do, we always make lots of assumptions.
Right, right.
And I think we'll have to make the assumption that, we're not gonna get a hurricane or
Sure,
or
sure.
something that
yeah,
comes
yeah,
in
yeah.
and raises it 5 feet. But we will have a benchmark or a staff gauge at the lake,
Right,
so that we can see, if it's surveyed and it says 2 inches on the gauge, and,
Yeah.
we go out there and it says 4 inches on the gauge, we know the lake's up to
Gotcha,
2 inches.
okay.
So,
Great.
okay,
okay.
we good?
We have a vote?
With approval, we move forward.
Awesome.
All set.
There was a motion and a second, I don't know if you
Yeah.
voted for it.
I don't think we voted.
No, I don't think so either. Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. So.
Get it done, let's move on. See you in 2 weeks with all the answers.
Yeah,
Nope, just keep in mind, the neighbors
Understood.
paying attention.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
And we put it out there that if you know anyone who wants to be a part of the
Yes.
process, and please let them know, contact the sewer
People are
department.
very happy to have me,
So.
me be the one.
Easier for all of us.
It's easier for everyone, yeah.
Yep.
All of these things that are going to be going on to make sure that there's no impact on wildlife and this and that and the other thing, at what point do you measure whether there's gonna be any impact on other wells in the vicinity?
Well, it would be part of, so the process for doing the what we call prolonged pump test is actually fairly involved. And it includes doing what DEP, Mass DEP refers to as a site exam, which is identifying receptors. So it could be wetlands, it could be plant, animal species, plant species that depend on water resources and private wells. It also looks at contamination that might be in the area that we.
So that's part of the process?
It's all part of the process,
Okay.
yeah. So as part of what we would do is, as before the prolonged, before even spending the money to drill that well, would be get information that exists on private wells in the area. How are they constructed? When were they constructed? How are they constructed? In other words, are they drilled into rock? That means a lot to me. If it's drilled into rock versus a screen in
Right.
soil,
So then we
much different.
10
effect.
minutes.
So those are the kind of things we would look at before we go.
you can
So
move down to
that's
this.
coming in the future at some point, if everything is going
Right,
well.
that's right.
That's next.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We're gonna finish superintendent's report
Thank you.
before
Thanks for coming.
Thanks again, Sue.
While we have time.
Good.
Yeah, we'll continue.
Yeah.
We were concerned that our 8 o'clock appointment might not show up, but in the meantime, why don't you continue with the superintendent's report until another 10 minutes, we'll see what happens.
All right. I think we pretty much finished up on Berry Corner Road, unless there was any questions on that.
Nope, well, I actually do have one question. Has Steve been, spending any time down there, or is he
Yes.
back? He has, okay.
He's been tracking his hours, and I'll have him put together his notes. If you guys are interested, we'll get his notes together and
Yeah.
get that in a report form. So you can see what he spent for hours there and what he has for notes.
Yep.
But he's been there every day. Probably gonna say average of 4, 5, 6 hours a day. Now, the pump station finally is taking place. Luckily, they're kind of right next to each other. He can bounce back and forth as he comes and goes, so, it seems to be going pretty well.
Good to have our eyes and ears on the ground.
Yes, definitely. And again, so the Route 169 pump station, they began construction last week as far as clearing the property. The erosion control is installed, the trees have been cut. This week, they actually started digging and installing the water line off of Snake Hill Road. So that's going on. We do have our monthly site meeting tomorrow to talk about progress and the next steps. As I get minutes from those meetings, I'll forward them to you as well, so you can just be informed of what's taking place. The agendas and the minutes seem to be pretty good. They follow through with a lot of information, talking about what's been done and what is proposed to be done. So as that moves forward, I'll share as much information as I can with you guys.
Excuse me, Peter, the meeting location is where?
That one is in the library.
At what time?
Tomorrow at 10? I believe 10. I'll just double check.
Upstairs, downstairs, or in the downstairs?
Downstairs meeting room.
Meeting. Thank you.
Yes, 10 a.m. Any questions on the pump station? Okay. The school loop, ExxonMobil has awarded the bid for the school loop to Albanese Brothers. They're in the process of finalizing agreements and plan on beginning construction hopefully in early September. I'm not aware of a pre-construction meeting at this time, but I'll let you know as soon as I'm aware of that. So you guys can attend if you like.
This is the same Albanese who worked in town years ago on a sewer. Yeah.
So,
I think there are some people still looking for some things, you know, but what, if I may, what is is there a specific time, if in fact any one of these contractors does damage, that you've got to speak up, say what the damage is, and within a period of time? Because for some reason, I'm recalling 24 months when they were here 10 years ago or 12 years ago.
Time of the bond?
It's usually a year. It's hard to know what ExxonMobil put, it's not our contract, so we'd have to see what ExxonMobil put in our contract, in their contract for performance guarantees. That'd be a good question to ask when we have their pre-con meeting, or even tomorrow, what type of performance guarantee ExxonMobil requires. Because again, it's not a typical state, town, municipal bid job.
Right.
So,
Who's to say ExxonMobil's not gonna get somebody else to do services?
Yeah, I know.
Albanese probably isn't gonna stick around and do services, they're gonna do mainline and leave.
we'll have to find that out.
I had a friend of mine,
I'm not-
his metal railing leading down got wiped out. Oh, we'll fix it, we'll fix it, we'll fix it. Then the bell went off and goes, sorry, too late.
When they say the school loop, that's the entire loop?
Old Worcester Road, Morton Station, Mugget Hill Road, back up to Main Street, yes.
Weren't they talking about
Including
breaking
Overlook.
that down into several different?
No, not
Contractors?
that I'm aware of.
Oh, I thought she had mentioned that at the
I think
meeting here.
they might talk about having two crews do the same job, but I don't think they ever
Talk
talked about splitting
about
it.
breaking out the pump stations,
No, I know the pump station they did.
but the mainline work is all gonna be one
Okay,
contract.
I think it was Cruz.
maybe it
Yeah.
was then.
I think they talked about having a separate crew follow to come in and do the laterals after. I always assumed it would be the same contractor, not a different
But the way
contractor.
that they have up to a year, I don't think Albany's gonna hold a crew just for that for a year.
For laterals.
Doesn't make any sense.
No, but if they had a punch list, they would go through it.
Yeah, but once the pump fix is done, they're done.
Peter, while we're on this contractors in ExxonMobil, what's happening up at St. Mary's Way?
They're still trying to figure it out.
So they're still searching for the leak?
Yes. I
Okay.
believe they were filling the line today, actually.
Do what?
For the third
Do
time,
another
fourth time?
pressure test.
Because
Yes.
I went by, I saw it open, then I saw it closed, then I
Yes.
saw it open.
No, they've been kind of banging their heads against
Tough
the wall
number,
trying to
huh?
figure that out.
Yeah, okay.
Why, what's the problem?
They can't get it to pass the pressure test. They've been fighting it probably for 3 months.
On what size line?
I believe it's a 4-inch line
Oh,
up
yeah.
St. Mary's Way, off of Stafford Street, with probably maybe 500 feet with maybe 3 connections, 3 laterals off of it.
Who's doing that? ExxonMobil?
Sin,
Yeah, I believe it was from ExxonMobil and it got subbed down to Sin. I'm not sure if they're working directly for ExxonMobil, if Kleinfelder hired them separate. But it's part of, yes, under ExxonMobil.
That's that 2-inch going across
St.
country
Mary's Way.
tied to that?
No, that 2-inch got dropped off of
Got
that, I
Xed.
believe.
Yeah, that idea was scrapped.
just straight up.
Yes, that 2-inch, again, got scrapped before my time here, so. All right, so, have a meeting with Veolia, with John Oatley and some of his guys to talk about evaluating RBCs 1 and 2, which we discussed at our last meeting. Finally coordinated some time so they can come there. John's gonna have a couple of his maintenance guys come out and evaluate RBCs 1 and 2 to see if there's anything we can do to fix them, to get them online rather than doing a full-blown replacement. And just kinda assess what's there and give us some information. So they'll be out here Wednesday, following up on that based on the information we got from the Headworks analysis. Also, the same day, luckily, the facility manager for McDonald's will be in the area. He's coming up from Long Island. I think he comes up once a month. We're gonna meet with him to talk about his concentrations of their sewer and talk about maybe open the door to see what we can do differently to come up with a way to hopefully do some type of pre-treatment to get their loadings down so they're kind of more acceptable and more user-friendly to the plant. So hopefully we'll have some good progress to come out of that meeting and hopefully have something to report back to you that kind of find a solution to help us operate the plant a little more efficiently. At the last meeting, we talked about the finance director coming forward to talk to you about how she's setting up the accounts She has not had time to get that finalized yet, as she's still finishing up with prior FY18 information, so as soon as that is done, she is planning on coming here to have that discussion with you. Valley Green Grow. I attended an initial meeting at the planning board regarding Valley Green Grow, the marijuana cultivation facility that's planning on going into Charlton Orchards. They are interested in connecting to water and sewer for the project. Very preliminary discussion, I have no hard numbers at this time. They have proposed to possibly connect to water off of Route 20, the water line that is existing, and use that to fill for fire suppression and to fill their cistern systems only for watering their crops. They plan to be self-contained. They say they're gonna use approximately 30,000 gallons per day. Again, I haven't seen any hard numbers, but they're gonna collect that from roof runoff and recycling. They just want water to possibly top off if they happen to run short. They said they are planning on using the existing well that's on site, that's a registered public water supply well, as their source for potable water for their employees. Whether or not that's gonna work, that depends who you talk to, but initially that's part of their request. They're also requesting to tie in the sewer for domestic waste only, no processed waste at this time. So again, I asked them to get me some hard numbers based on Title V to see what we could be getting. And if you go with their number of 300 employees, Title V says for a factory, which is kind of the closest thing I could come to find on Title V, is 25 gallons per day per person. So you're looking at about 7,500 gallons per day of Title V flow from that facility for domestic use only.
And that's based on how many hours of operation?
24. So I believe they're gonna run 3 shifts, but 300 employees total. So that puts it kind of in the same ballpark as Treehouse and Carl Stortz, who are already connected for. Well, I mean, Treehouse is processed also, but Carl Stortz is domestic only.
Again, like tonight with the doctor's office, the building permit's gonna dictate a lot of what's required for them to follow with limitations, correct?
I don't believe so. As far as number of employees,
Well, so the site plan, they're actually going through site plan review.
they are,
So all of those numbers will be provided in site plan review.
correct. So again, it's kind of, site plan review will get us hopefully that information. They're not far enough into site plan review to have those concrete numbers yet. So
Sure.
once we
And-
get there,
And for their use, being classified as office space, factory, whatever.
Yes.
Again, that's between site plan review
Yep.
and the building permit.
we'll be able to identify, correct.
That's right.
How
and
much is,
That's what we use for our information, so we're consistent and we're also not saying, no, this is how we classify you. You're already classified in those 2 departments.
so again, it was a very preliminary meeting, just wanted to let you know, in case you read in the paper, that they are interested in connecting to water and sewer, so you're not surprised. I don't have a follow-up meeting with them as of yet, but as we move forward, I'll let you know. Okay. And lastly, on my superintendent's report is the sewer rate increase. Last year, about this time, you voted to do a 9% increase based on the study by Pioneer Consulting. He actually recommended you do a 27% increase, and you decided to do a 9% at that time and have a relook at it the next year. We're coming up on the anniversary of that. The last increase came into effect on October 6th, which coincides with that 3rd quarter billing. So if you'd like to have another increase at the same time frame, which would be October of 2018, I think we should start to discuss it now. If there's interest, I'll put together some budget information and freshen it up so that you can look at it and consider it. I'm not saying that we definitely need to do a 9% increase, but I don't think it's in our best interest to do a 0% increase again, because cost of, everything associated with our budget is increasing year to year. So to not raise your rates, I'm not sure is the best way to go. So
If there's no objection, I'll put together some information and provide it at one of our next meetings, depending on how full they get, and put that in front of you for your review.
The problem I have, Peter, first of all, it's a good idea.
Yep.
But we don't have the financial information from our finance director. So how can we make any decisions without knowing the numbers, the real numbers?
You know what we have for proposed revenue and what we have for proposed expenses. If you look back at what we've collected for revenues in 2000 and FY '18, it's within 20,000 of what I use for proposed revenue this year. And again, when I present to you the budget, you'll see where our expenses are and how I've changed how the budget was kind of done, so that it's maybe a little closer to what's really happening. And I think if you look at how close we are, I'm not saying that it's not attainable, but if we don't have quarters that stay consistent, if we have some low quarters, or if the MTA decides to pre-treat and you lose their surcharge money, that's a big hit into your revenue. So I think we need to, again, I'll present you the information and you can look at it regardless of, we know what we've collected for the last 4 quarters. We know what we've billed, we know what should have been collected, we know what we've billed. So for the last fiscal year, we know our anticipated revenue, I believe, is like 1.18 million. Based on the budget I presented, this year's budget, if we were to expend every line item, was 1.168 million, so it's within $20,000. So granted, half of that year had the 9% increase, half of that last fiscal year did not, or 3/4 of it did, so. Yeah, I just want to present it to you, and you guys can look at it and make that decision then, but definitely concerned about having a 0% increase and starting to do that, because I think we need, the other thing I talked to the finance director about is we do not have a stabilization account for the water and sewer. We have an enterprise account, which just allows us to collect money and spend money. The town's general fund, they collect money, expend money. When they get their free cash certified, they take and they put some away into a stabilization account. And that money stays the same. We don't have that. So when we get any extra money that's not spent, plus previous year's retained earnings, gets carried over, and you have this retained earnings number that just kind of floats out there. It's not necessarily attainable. We can draw from it at town meeting, from town meeting approval based on what's there, but I think it's better for us to take money from those retained earnings each year and put them into a stabilization account, so we can start growing that for capital improvements that might need to be done in 4, 5, 6 years from now. And that way there, we know we have a set number that we can work towards, and we can start to set up some capital improvements that might need to take place. Instead of just knowing we have $600,000 in retained earnings, and okay, that might be there depending on what happens, and we want to spend $300,000 to fix the 2 RBCs, well, all of a sudden your retained earnings is, if that's your true savings account or what we have for true solvency, you just cut it in half. And if our revenues start to dip, or if we have some other catastrophic failure, or we have to do some major improvement, we don't have the funding to do that. So, again, I think if we could be at 110% revenues for what our operating budget is, then comfortable, you take that 10% and you put that aside every year. When it comes back as retained earnings into your stabilization account, we can just slowly grow that and then self-fund some capital improvements. So the rates are consistently increasing, but much like cost of living rates increase, and we just move it forward that way.
Can you give us a close estimate, not tonight, at the next meeting or whenever you present the information, what an average residents would see for a cost increase based off?
At 9%? Sure.
Yeah.
Yep,
Just
exactly.
say, it's gonna be this much a year, just so people
Sure.
know and realize, and it's real live terms.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good point. So if there's no questions on that, I'll plan on presenting that at one of our next meetings.
I'll give you a comment.
Sure.
I'm against opening any new accounts until we get the balance on our old accounts.
How many accounts?
I don't know. No one knows. No one knows. And what about interest income?
Not to get into a major discussion, but if I could just backtrack 1 second to the, BGG.
Yep.
Part of, I know what's coming down the pike is a lot of questions are gonna be asked about them tying in, and whether or not they're gonna be fully on the water line or not, or partially. Can you have some initial discussions, maybe with the Board of Health, and see where the, I would say, governing body lies to say, okay, you can, in the past, I know some residences have been made to fill in their well when they tie into the water line, right?
Yes.
Is that the same procedure that we're gonna do here, or is it gonna be, okay, you can keep your well?
Well, again, their initial plan was to use their existing well, which is a licensed public water supply well, to provide water for employees at this time. So they'd probably want to try and keep it. Yeah, but I will ask the Board of Health what their thoughts are on that. And again, a couple of the engineers I've been talking to said that that type of increase in usage for a public water supply well triggers a new requiring a new permit application, which I highly doubt it will pass because there's not enough room left on the property to give it the zone 1 protection radius for the well. So, and then, again, I was talking to Mr. Lemansky earlier, and he brought up our bylaw that states anyone abutting the water line can be forced to connect. Now, the Route 20 water line's dry, but it is there and available. So, again, the discussions have been very preliminary, and in talking, I had some real quick 1 minute or 2 minute discussion on this with Southbridge at the end of a different meeting, and, you know, that comes out to water quality. And if we force them to connect, much like you did with 10 North Main Street, 10 North Main Street, where they had to blow water off if they weren't using enough in order for them to connect. So it's gonna possibly trigger the same situation, and we're just gonna have to kind of to go with it and work with them as we move forward. So,
Looking at the plan, their water connection should come from Old Worcester Road. That's where it should come from. Then it doesn't force us to open up the Route 20 line, which is a 12-inch line with, at that time, it'll have one customer with the employees, and that's all the use it'll have. So I think that's gonna end up being trouble, to where the key thing we're gonna have to do is, in order to meet their timetable, is next spring, I believe, when Albany's is gonna start this construction, is their, because this fall, are they gonna do the Masonic Home line first?
we'll find out when we have that pre-con meeting.
Well, we should be in charge of what they're gonna construct, when, rather than let them be in charge. Because I think.
So I know the overlook is a priority for us,
Yeah,
and I believe they know that as well.
yeah,
So in the initial discussion, it has been, they're gonna bring that water line up Masonic Home Road initially to get that done before the weather turns.
right.
Hopefully design the pump station over the remainder of the winter and install that in the spring. That way there we can get overlook connected, and there'll be a good customer to start drawing water there, start the construction down Old Worcester Road. Valley Green Grow, I'm not sure, again, what their timetable is for construction to open, that they threw out 12 to 18 months. I'm not sure if that's real or not,
So
but we need to
they're
work.
out there. And they're certainly not gonna start this fall.
No,
I wouldn't
correct.
think so. So they're gonna start next spring.
Yep.
And next spring, we're gonna be putting pipes in the line, and by that time, our new number one priority is gonna be Old Worcester Road. And.
Correct. The only problem with that is, much like Berry Corner Road, the main is getting installed down the roadway very quick, but it's not gonna be active until all the laterals are completed.
Unless we sit down and talk with them and say,
Correct.
this is what we want you to do, and how can you help us to achieve the goal
Right.
of making it active down to the corner of Morton Station Road?
So we can have that, we can, I mean, it's the same people in the office, whether we
Exactly.
discuss that tomorrow or wait till our pre-con meeting for the school, but
Well,
So
open
this-
up the discussion with them tomorrow and see if,
definitely.
Yeah.
Will do.
Thank you, Peter.
Sure, thank you.
Okay, next thing on the list is 107 Center Depot Road.
No,
No, did I miss?
yes, thank you. Sorry.
Who missed?
No,
North
North
Sturbridge, privilege fee?
Yes,
Okay, I'm sorry.
but, sorry, real
Thought
quick,
since they're not here, that.
we still have to take a vote on that
Sure.
first, so we can assess it.
Yep.
Yesterday, one of, Mike from Violi had to go to a alarm call for a grinder pump on J. Hammond Road. It was 5 J. Hammond Road. I believe the connection was made in 2007. And that's,
5 J. Hammond Road?
yes,
Connection had to be in 11 or 12, because there were no connections on J. Hammond Road.
it was 2007.
I don't
Right,
think
it was
that-
right when Mr. Elliott came on board.
Yeah, I recall that.
It was 2000.
I was at that meeting, it was a little bit after that, because one of the big questions was, how come, it was said on the board prior to that, that you couldn't tap into a pressure line. So none of those homes on J. Hammond Road were able to connect,
Yes.
nor any of the homes that were on Stafford Street, until they got to the pinnacle of the hill, and then it went gravel and could connect. I know Mr. Elliott said, I don't know what you're talking about, because it's done all the time. So that property was, in fact, that property was allowed to connect, and in fact, it was discussed that that property was part of Phase 1, and I believe the privilege fee they got was the Phase 1 privilege fee rather than the 8,200. Okay?
It was connected in 2007. We have a
Yep.
tie-in card.
Yep.
They received an $8,200 betterment fee, a privilege fee that stayed $8,200.
They didn't come back and ask for a,
No, that didn't happen until 2011, like you said, when a couple other residents on
Okay,
J. Hammond
okay.
Road came. The first one got assessed, I think, 2 EDUs, and that got dropped down to 1529, and then everyone else after that got assessed the Phase 1.
Phase 1,
For
okay.
some reason, this property, and again, this is a different homeowner now than the
Okay.
person who connected. So the issue that we're having, is Mike from Veolia went there to troubleshoot the alarm, and it's not a Little Giant pump system. So what they did was they took their D-box, and they put a pump in there, and they just discharged it out. So they have a Liberty Pumps alarm system,
Yep,
and their D-box is under this deck, and they're gonna have to go ahead and dig that up to find out where the pump is in their tank.
okay.
As I look at it, it's not our responsibility. Paul was in this morning, I talked to him about it, and he asked that we just bring it up, mention it tonight to make sure that we all are in agreement that because the homeowner didn't buy didn't buy one of our pumps and did their own thing, it's not our responsibility to fix it. Especially seeing our employees or Viola's employees have no experience in fixing whatever type of pump is in there.
Yep.
So, I had an initial conversation with them today about that, and I told them what my initial thoughts were, and then I was gonna be discussing it with you tonight, and then I'd follow up with them in the morning. But I just want, again, to check with you guys to make sure you're on the same page.
at that point in time, you were able to provide your own pump. And you didn't have to follow the procedure of purchasing it through the sewer department, right? Is that the way it was working back then?
I know Phase 2 is when we bought all the pumps. Did we buy pumps in Phase 1, Peter?
I'm not sure. I don't believe so, because Phase 1 was, there were
Charlton
there were
City.
minimal
Very
connections.
few.
Charlton City and the 2 turnpikes.
Right. Phase 1 was
Yeah.
pretty much
Yeah,
specific
so
just for the
pretty much they're on their
turnpikes.
own.
But even still, most of your commercial customers now don't buy pumps from us, so they're responsible for their own
Commercial side.
commercial.
Yeah.
Residential side, I mean, I'm not sure how many residential customers we have that don't have, other than this one. I'm sure there might be a couple outliers out there, but I'm not sure how many.
Peter, do we have a date, our sunset date on the pumps, our responsibility of the pumps? In other words, the sunset date is the date of our debt being paid off.
I believe the betterments go to 2022 or 2023.
The ones from phase 2?
Yes. Because don't forget, the project took place from 99 till 01, 02, and by the time they
Okay.
actually assessed the betterments, it wasn't
Okay.
until 2003, 2004,
Yeah.
and it's 20 years from there. So,
Okay.
all right. So I'll just follow up with her on that. Thank you. So, 7 North Sturbridge Road?
Yep, we'll ask, who's gonna excuse themselves here tonight? Mr. Lemansky ought to, and I think you ought to too, for the same reason. And Peter, you too. It's the same discussion we've had in the past, with the three of you.
Well, this, again, the line's accepted. I don't see a need for myself to recuse myself. It has nothing to do with me.
It's fine with me, you're the one
This
who
has nothing, it
mentioned.
has nothing to do with Mr. Lemansky, it has to do with a different property owner who wants to connect to the line that you guys have already decided what to do with, so
Well,
I don't see a need, again, for myself to recuse myself.
Everyone's responsible for their own ethics, so.
Yep.
Well, the reason why I'm accusing myself is because of family relations that own that property at the time they're talking about.
You don't need to explain yourself to us.
I know, but again, I'm explaining it to Peter,
Okay.
why Peter, for the same reason he recused himself a month and a half ago, is the same reason why he should recuse himself again, because of the owners of that property, which wasn't me, but again, they're
Understood.
family members.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned with Alex, it's the same situation. That's just my opinion. Thank you. Have a good night. There's nothing I have to describe.
No, this could be,
We have new business.
Was Rob talking about the right thing?
I'm not sure, but that's his option, so.
I don't know, maybe he
Anyways.
wasn't.
I think he had,
I don't know,
It's-
the schedule screwed up.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's all right.
That's, okay.
So,
I think he
everyone's
said about
responsible for
107,
themselves.
All right, so we're on
Not
7
seven.
North Sturbridge
previous
Road.
owners with
Yep.
I know.
Rob's 3 kids, so.
There's an existing 2-family house there that wants to connect to sewer. They have already paid, they've filled out a connection route form. There was no betterment
I will abstain from. This one I will
You can
from,
take your stuff home too, but.
I'm coming back for
Oh,
the other
okay,
piece.
so we're gonna adjourn afterwards.
so they're looking to connect, based on the way that privilege fees have worked in the past. It's 1 EDU it's 1 privilege fee per EDU, so a 2-family will be 2 EDUs, and it'll be a $16,400 privilege fee.
Right.
I've discussed this with the property owner, and they had some questions about it, and I told them they were gonna be on the agenda tonight. And they weren't
Yep.
sure if they were gonna make it, so.
Okay.
um,
I'll make a motion that we accept it as printed, and charge the privilege fee, $16,400 for the address.
I got a second on that?
Second.
Okay, any discussion on it? I mean, that's pretty standard.
Mhm.
So all those in favor, please say aye.
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 You might as well sign it. Ladies will go last this.
So, for 107 Center Depot Road, I am going to recuse myself for
Okay.
appearance of favoritism as of my family friendship with the previous owners. Be in the hallway waiting. Thank you.
You see Alex, you want
I'll
to
send
sign
it.
Peter, I do have a question while we're waiting for him to put it back. If, for the meeting, let's say on August 22nd, if 3 or more of us show up, you can come in. If, let's say 3 commissioners show up, we haven't posted it, does that mean one of them has to leave because it's open meeting law?
To be safe, yes.
Okay.
You could probably argue that it was an informational meeting and there was no deliberation that was had, but rather than having to,
What, for the pre-construction, pre-con meeting?
yes, for any.
I
type of
can't
meeting
make it.
like that.
I was just curious.
When is it?
If we just head count right
Which
now.
one? There's a meeting tomorrow
For what?
for Route 169 pump station.
No, the Albanese meeting.
It's not set yet.
Oh, all right.
So once I have more, I'll put it out there, and if I get a response from more than 2 of you, I'll post.
Oh, I
just so
thought you
that-
meant tomorrow's meeting.
Well, I think Jen was talking more towards the pre-con meeting for the school.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So if there's enough interest and I hear back from more than 2 of you, I will post that, just so that we're safe moving forward. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
So, just so we're clear on all this, I've been dismissed from any legal stuff that Womansky brought against me, right?
It's up to you, you're the one,
No, that's
you know,
fine.
sitting there, if you're okay with it.
I'm
you
good
know.
with it.
Everyone's responsible for themselves, in my opinion, so.
Yeah.
and that's-
All right, the next thing on our agenda is 107 Center Depot Road. The story here came up when, about a year ago, the town did a forensic forensic audit of the town, and during that time, it was discovered that there were some unpaid fines dating back to property that was put in, I think, in 2002, when the fines, I think, were issued in 2006 or 2007. These fines were rather steep. I've read different things about them. It's $5,000 a day, $3,000 a day. I've also heard things that they were totaling 52,000. So where in the actual figures lie, I don't know. And it goes back 10, 11, almost 12 years. I'm sorry, March of '07. Okay, so that's 11 and a half years then. So all I do know about the properties is that at the time, they were issued a certificate of compliance. And from what I understand, part of the deficiencies that we're getting fined for was because of lack of turning in an as-built. And in the meantime, the properties aren't even owned by the same people. And the people who issued the fine in the first place didn't follow up on it at all. As a matter of fact, when you do transfer a property, you have to get, you have to go to the title company and have a title search done, and if there were any liens on the property, that would do it. You also have to get a CML, Certificate of Municipal Lien, that's done for things that didn't quite make it, like local taxes that are due and stuff like that. Again, it would have shown up as a lien on the property. There were no liens in this property in order for it to be sold. And now we're asking what to do about fines that were issued 11 years ago. And if there is a statute of limitations on this, I'm not aware of it, but there could be, and it would probably either be 8 years or maybe even only 3 years, but I don't know if it does. So the way I look at it, these fines are more or less uncollectible now, and another thing that would make them uncollectible is the doctrine of latches. If you haven't heard of that term, doctrine of latches, it's spelled latches, L-A-T-C-H-E-S, just like a door latch. And doctrine of latches is something like a statute, except it doesn't put a specific time and date on it. It's kind of a subjunctive thing, you know, what's reasonable and what's not reasonable. And I think if this were to go to court or anything else, or we were to try to collect the fines, I'm sure the people who were asked to pay them would come at us with their attorney and invoke the doctrine of latches, which would let us, you know, these fines essentially are uncollectible just because of so much time has gone by. It's not reasonable to give a fine and wait 12 years to try to collect it. So with that in mind, I would ask this board to perhaps make a motion to rescind any and all fines that were associated with this property that long time, number of years ago.
Have we gotten any legal, has anybody sought out any legal counsel on this for a legal decision?
Well, this is a thing where the board issued the fine. The board should also have the right to rescind that fine. It
Okay,
stays
well,
within the
my
board.
question still stands. Have
Well,
we gotten,
Yes and no. Not specifically on this date, but we had a similar instance that was at our last meeting or the meeting before, and we did get counsel on that, and it was basically the same answer. The board giveth, the board can taketh away. And, it was with the, with the Leonin line, yeah, and, so it's not a dissimilar circumstance. So,
It's, I just wanna make sure as a board or a commission, we're doing our due diligence.
well, I think,
We've gotten legal opinions on other things.
yeah, well, do you think it's reasonable to try to collect the fine that was given 11 years ago?
I'm not interjecting my
And
opinion into it.
nothing done in between, and no
I'm
liens
not
put on the
interjecting my
property?
opinion in it.
Yeah.
I just think it would behoove us to get a legal opinion.
Well, I just more or less thought it was unnecessary, and the other thing is the time involved. We have one person in particular pressuring us for an answer what we're gonna do about this. And to get an attorney's opinion that most likely is gonna be what, what I'm just saying now, could take several weeks.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
How, first of all, why, you started to say why this was on the agenda?
This was on the agenda because it's a forensic file that was done a year ago by the town, a forensic audit. Someone doing that, and I don't remember the name of the company, you probably know it, Sue. Yeah, they had uncovered the fact that some fines were issued years and years ago, and it just dead-ended. So they want to, what's with these fines? Are they still outstanding? Are they gonna try to collect them? What to do about it? And this is my answer, considering the length of time, that they are virtually uncollectible, even if we wanted to, which I don't think we do, but even if we did want to, because of the doctrine of latches. It's just, they go to court and argue, this is ridiculous. Try to give me, and especially since it's a different homeowner now. The people who own 107 is not the same ones that the fines were issued against. So it just seemed like time to put this to rest.
Well, I've always said from the get-go on this, day one, I said, I'm not interested in going back and rehashing stuff that's been hashed to death, and gone over, and that was why I'm asking the question of, how did this get on the agenda? Why is it on the agenda? Because, I just don't, okay, so it came through, it really came through a request from Debbie LaPlaca, if I'm correct in that. That's how it made its way on the
That's
agenda.
correct, yeah. I didn't want to name names, but since you
well,
did,
that's-
that's the truth, yeah.
It's public information. That's
Yeah.
the truth of the matter.
And if she didn't get a speedy answer, she threatened to publish something about us trying to do a cover-up over it, something like that. And I invited her to be at our meeting tonight, but she said she had another obligation, and even if she didn't, she doesn't come and, entertain questions, because I thought she may have other questions too. And if she came to the meeting, she could clear all the air with everything she had a question about. But she is looking for a speedy answer to this, or I shouldn't say speedy. Apparently, she asked this question about 3 to 4 months ago, and still hasn't gotten an answer from us, and I certainly think she deserves an answer. And because of the explanation I just gave, I believe our answer is to rescind any and all fines dating back to this situation.
Well, in my overall experience with other towns and surrounding towns, not Charlton in particular, once a property has passed hands, it's difficult to collect fines on such, but I do know that going backwards and trying to turn back the hands of time on this property or any other property, and for instance, the Leonin line as of last week, it's going to be very costly for this town to do that. And I'm not a big fan of getting legal opinions on fishing expeditions. And I think this is a fishing expedition. It's not even put forth by a citizen, so that's my thought on it. I've stated publicly before that I'm in this position to make decisions, not get opinions. I don't know how you may feel about it, Jen. You know, Alex, he's
I'm
absolutely
just
looking for
making sure we're
information.
doing our due diligence. Has nothing to do with anything else.
Yep.
Do we know if there's other fines that are floating out there that have not been collected?
They may be, but they weren't brought to our attention, and this
How-
one was.
I wonder how we would find that out.
Well, it's just like last week.
Oh,
The same situation, or a few weeks ago, same situation may have taken place on another line. If we're gonna go back for one, we're gonna go back for all.
Right.
And you can't single out one property and say, we're gonna go after this property and just not look at anything else. And I think we're gonna spend an awful lot of time, energy, and money when our real directive of this board is supposed to be moving forward and working on getting water for the town. Sure, dealing with day-to-day situations that come up, but not going back and rehashing things that have happened by past
this
boards.
isn't last year either, this is
No,
11
that's-
years ago,
Right.
you know, that.
Absolutely.
But I'm just saying, if there are fines that are hanging out there from, say, last year or the year before, I mean, we need to start moving on them, or,
Well,
Okay.
in all honesty, I think you'd know about those ones.
I don't know if we will.
I would think, read the
you've been
forensic
on the board.
report.
For about a year and a half now,
Yeah.
I think so.
Mhm.
But anything before that, I don't know.
Mhm.
So where do you draw the line? Is, I guess what I'm saying, I'm just trying to play devil's advocate here.
Right.
I'm not trying to drag the meeting out, I just wanna know, like, where are we gonna draw the line? Do we say 7 years? Do we,
Well, that's why I asked the simple question, to get a legal opinion.
Yeah.
Whether it's the life of it, or if the life of it's already passed, then it's dead, is it not?
correct?
Absolutely, I
So
totally
that
agree with
was
you
my-
there, but,
Like I said, it's to put it to rest, one way or another.
and I think that's part of what Paul may have touched on, and I like the thought of what you're saying as well, Jen. But getting back to what you were saying, Paul, of what we did get for information from the legal opinion is that, we can take back what we gave. And if we are to say, what's a reasonable length of time for you? What do you think's reasonable? Do you think it's 3 years? Do you think it's 5? Do you think it's 7? Do you think it's 10? And say, any and all fines
But
past that
are
point in
you
time.
comparing two of the same things?
Absolutely, because we as a board can say, we don't wanna go back any further than this, because it's gonna be a costly fishing expedition. Everyone under the sun's gonna come out of the woodwork and point the finger and say, hey, go look over there, I think that they got fined and they didn't pay, and next thing you know, we're gonna be chasing our tail. So, why not come up with a certain length of time that's reasonable to everybody?
The people-
And say, okay, I'm comfortable with 3 years. I'm comfortable with 5 years. And it's a blanket policy, because this way, we don't have to worry about fishing trips. We don't have to worry about legal opinions that aren't going to warrant us spending the money. It gets very expensive, as you know, to get legal opinions, so. That's, and then, when you do ask a question, you have to be very specific in the question. So,
And the board who issued it never put liens in the property, so it makes you question, why did they issue it? Was it just, pressure to try to force them? Was it personalities or politics involved with it? There's a lot of reasons it could have been issued, and since it was never followed up on by the board who issued it, I think all the more reason it should be dismissed.
well, I think, I don't like I really don't like the terminology of saying dismiss fines against a certain property, because again, that goes into, we're talking about one specific property and saying, okay, this property right here, we're gonna dismiss it, but what about the others? Or this property right here, we're gonna go after the fines, but not the others. I think we need that blanket policy statement of, this covers all properties, all business, and we don't go back after that length of time. Now it's a standard moving forward, and that's one of the things that the Lansing Health Report has pointed out, is we need more standards for this board.
Yep, but this was a situation that they said needs to be addressed and/or rectified to some degree.
Exactly.
This particular situation, that's why I said
That's right.
we should get some kind of outside opinion on where to go and what to do with it. That's where my thought comes from.
Well,
If you're gonna reference the Melanson, what's Melanson Heath report?
the MH report, Paul, but, I know that report in itself, what did that cost us?
I don't know.
Well, I think that report, that report was part of the selectmen's meeting last week or the week before, which I watched on television. And I believe,
The open forum?
yes, yep. And I believe that report cost the taxpayers $5,000. And that was another fishing trip. All of these fishing trips, in the tune of 5,000, 1,000, 7,000, here, there, everywhere, they add up. And I'm not interested in going down this road constantly and wasting the energy of this board as well as citizens' money. I would just like to know what everyone thinks is a reasonable standard of time moving forward to say, beyond this point, we're not interested in pursuing anything. I don't know if, personally, I think it's 5 to 7 year period. That's,
Either way, this,
that's
this,
me
you know,
personally.
we're
Well, that should
talking
be-
about this particular one.
It should be an easy answer for a lawyer to say. I mean, I'm kind of leaning towards we should get a legal opinion as well. At least for a statute of time limit. Because then we have it and it's not the board making the decision of 7 years or 5 years. Because let's say you have a fine that's 6 years and 11 months and some odd days, like, then it's like such a fine line. If it comes from somebody else, and then we go clean from there. That's kind of the way that I look at it.
And try not paying your taxes, your real estate taxes. See how long it takes for the town to put a lien on your property.
Right.
You know, not very long. And certainly, 11 years is ridiculous. And I think at least we ought to give an answer to Debbie LaPlaca to do what we're gonna do with this particular case, and we'll take up any others if they come. In the meantime, try to pass a law, not so much, is a time limit, because, like a statute, because that, I don't think that's, I think if a fine is administered, then I think the board has to follow up on that fine within a certain period of time, which would be a short period of time, 6 months or a year, or something like that. And if they don't put a lien on your property within that length of time, then it becomes null and void.
Okay.
But that's changing something, putting in our rule book that, not giving an answer tonight to this one.
Well, I don't think that, I don't think there is a specific answer to give tonight, any which way, based off the feedback of this board and the different positions we have. I do, however, believe that we should not just be talking about one property in general when we say that we're going back. In my short time on this board, it's already come up with several different times as far as the fines go. And, now that we're aware of, or I'm aware of those situations, and we start talking about this situation, naturally, if we're gonna go back on that situation, we're going back on the others. So you can't just single out one property. And that's why I say, there has to be consistency, there has to be a rule in place. You have to be able to say, okay, let's just say there is no timetable. Now, what do? We dedicate a full-time person's time, going back, looking at all of our business, as far back as we can go through the records, and say, okay, what fines do you know of, Paul, that are unpaid? What fines do you know of? What fines do I know of? So on and so forth. Please research these. Let's spend our taxpayers' dollars on trying to recoup these fees, whether they're $50 and we spend $5,000 to get the 50, or they're $52,000 and we spend $20,000 to get them. And that's a blanket policy where everyone's treated fairly and the same throughout. Not singling out one property because of a fishing expedition where someone's potentially involved in a lawsuit against each
Where
other.
this property has been sold, usually when the town doesn't get money, they attach the property, they put a lien against the property. As we just got permission to do with water bills that weren't paid to Southbridge, we can lien the property for it. In this case, we shouldn't lien the property because the owner the current owner bought this in good faith. And he passed the title exam, he passed a certificate of CML. So he was more or less, by paying the money for those people, guaranteeing that he had a clean piece of property. And now all of a sudden, now what do we do? And that's why I just think, in this particular one, it's a dead issue, and like you say, the board issued it, the board can rescind it.
I totally agree with you, given the length of time. I think it's well beyond a reasonable standard to go back that length of time. It's unreasonable. However, we cannot just do that for one property. I think it's singling out one property and saying special rules apply to one property. We make a length of
It
time.
goes the flip side too.
So if you say, and again, it's just that we're all entitled to our opinions and our belief, and it's very tough to convince someone of otherwise, but there needs to be a reasonable standard of time. I'm of that belief, whether it's stated it's indefinite, maybe that's the reasonable standard according to someone. There's no time limit for fines, you can always go back, but
That's why I felt a third-party legal opinion would be the simplest, most direct way to get the answer.
well, and that's why, though this subject matter may be pulled from the Melanson Health or the MH report, we can also potentially rely on some of that information, as well as the legal opinion we got for the last meeting, which tells us specifically in both situations, we need to adopt standards and create standards. And this situation, as well as many others, can get direction from those standards. We set the standards.
But where's the
Now,
foundation of those standards come from?
it comes from the belief of the people on the board, because we're the decision makers when it comes to those standards. You have been voted into that chair because you're a person who has the knowledge level, which I know personally, that I would want as a sewer commissioner. So we rely on your good judgment, your knowledge to make these decisions. That's my confidence level in you. That's my confidence level in Paul, in Jen, myself. That's why I believe we're here. And that standard is reasonable, what we set. So, I don't wanna spend needless money to only drive us back to this table at a later date and time to make a decision that we're going to make on our own anyways, after spending a lot of money. So, I'm not in favor of outside opinions on standards. That's just me.
You care to make a motion on this tonight, or at least a motion to get well, you said you're not in favor of getting an attorney's opinion. Somebody make a motion for something, and, because we're hashing this over now, but we're not accomplishing anything, we're not getting an answer to anybody who's looking for answers.
You stated what you felt was
Right, yeah.
a correct path for this. Would you like to make a motion, and I'd second that motion?
Well, if I were to do that, I would make a motion to rescind any fines associated with 107 Center Depot Road.
I'll second for discussion.
I still think we need to get a legal opinion on it to some degree. So there's some background behind it. I get what you're prattling on about making decisions and standards. But if we have something to stand on, I'm not in disagreement with you that it's a long time. fine. There should be some statute or some law that is associated with that. It should be pretty simple to come up with if there was a similar situation that came to a legal decision recently on the board. All right? Just because City Hall says so isn't necessarily the end all of this. All right? I'm just looking for the commission that it doesn't get into a legal battle.
I understand and appreciate that.
I do too, but I seem to think that we did get our answer with the last case. You know, the board issued it, the board can unissue it, so to speak. I don't see how
That
this
was
is
taking
different.
of infrastructure, that wasn't a monetary thing. Does it apply
No,
the same
I
to the
understand
same?
it's not a monetary thing, but it was still a situation where the legal opinion said, does the board have the right to...
And if it's that
you know,
simple, it shouldn't be that costly to get that opinion. Right?
If it's that simple, but unfortunately.
Well, you're leading down the path that the decision's already been made, well, then have a legal confirmation of it. That's all I'm asking.
Maybe the finance director has done this before. Maybe she has knowledge of it, I don't know. I think we need to exhaust all efforts before we go forward. That's just my own personal opinion. So, I move the question. I think we've discussed.
Well, I would like to,
And
I would
maybe
like
to
to
Jen's
find,
point,
I would like to find some common ground that we can move forward on.
So I move the
And-
question.
Well, you move the question, there's just no more discussion on it. I mean,
Right.
you can take a vote to move the question, but I think that,
You don't-
bottom line, it's not this. Well, let's vote on moving the question.
We don't vote
If
on
that's-
it.
Okay, well, we got a motion and a second, and all those in favor, say aye.
Nay.
What was
Aye,
your
all
motion?
those opposed. Oh, so,
wait,
When I said I move the question, that means the question goes to a vote. So the question that was put on the floor, that was seconded, is moved. No, it's moved like out of discussion, is my understanding. Correct?
to a vote,
To a
yeah.
vote. So I was moving the question to go to a vote.
And I
maybe
asked
it's
all,
as simple as getting hold of the DOR or the treasurer and them putting it doesn't, I'm just asking for some other,
So here's potentially some common ground that satisfies everyone's concerns. If we are to get legal counsel, pose the questions in this fashion. 2 questions. This way, we're not going off on a big fishing trip, we're not spending a lot of money. 1, is there a statute of limitation on fines? Question number 1. 2, can the commission itself set a limitation, X number of years, on how far we would like to go back on any fines or fishing trips? So that if the next person walks in the door and says, well, I have this case from 1970, and I'd like you guys to look at it, and I think that this person owes this plus interest, yada, 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 then we can say, we're sorry, but the commission has established a 5 or a 7-year term. So,
that's all,
Two-part
I'm asking is that we find a third party
Yeah.
that can either confirm nor deny.
Mhm. Those 2 questions. I would be in favor of asking those 2 questions for legal advice. It's directed, it's short, it's easy, and it's not specific to one property.
Unfortunately, we are talking about one property, so a decision has to be made one way or another that may or may not impact that one property. However, in the positive, it could positively influence the future of the commission making standards, making regulations that will positively impact the taxpayers. We don't have anything right now, unfortunately, as we sit here
that's-
today.
And that's what I'm trying to get is because right now we're 4. And based off discussion, we're not gonna get any direction. So I'm trying to come up with a positive direction that everyone feels is a compromise, and it moves ahead. So I'll make the motion that we seek legal counsel to verify two different topics. The first being,
Does this supersede your previous?
I didn't make a motion. Paul made a motion, it wasn't voted on.
So we have to vote on that first.
Okay. If you don't mind?
No, I just wanna make sure we're covered,
Yep.
that we're procedurally.
Mm-hmm. So let's vote on Paul's motion then.
I vote nay.
I said nay.
I'll say no.
So it did not pass. Two to
Okay.
two will not pass, so,
Yep. So,
What did you say, Russ?
no.
You said no.
3-1.
Yep. So, I'll make a motion that we seek legal counsel to verify 2 points. One, if there is a statute of limitations concerning fines, how far we can go back. Two, can the commission adopt our own timetable as to how long we would choose to go back and choose to enforce fines or not? Or pursue fines, I should say. Pursue fines. So that's my motion. Anyone want to second that?
I'll second it.
Good second, okay. Well, let's take,
Any
this
discussion on
discussion
that?
I would have is, when somebody has a grinder pump problem and they, twice in the year, or twice period, we fine them $100. Is there any time period before that goes on their bill?
That's attached to their water sewer bill.
Pardon?
That's attached to their water sewer bill, it's not a separate invoice.
Okay, so there's no time involved with that then, if it gets attached right away to the water sewer bill? They don't get any time.
They ju- yeah,
But if
they'll
they
get
paid the
their
water sewer bill but didn't pay the fine part of it, you know, it wouldn't take long before the town would have a lien on their property.
Correct. Well,
So,
Is, not just, but is there a breakdown in communication between water and sewer and the tax collector? You keep talking about liens and clear property?
well, these are both sewer and this situation, but,
Whatever.
you know,
Does it have to be legal counsel? Could we start with finance?
Well, that's what I said, just a third part, I changed it to a third party.
absolutely.
But is there a breakdown in communication between, and is that why there's no liens or there's no follow-through?
I don't know, you know, when a bill is issued and a fine is in, it goes right on the bill. There's no time at all involved with that, and they didn't do that with these fines, they didn't put them on their sewer bill immediately like they would have if either they were serious about it or something. I just think there was
Yeah, but
other
these were much
factors
bigger
involved.
fines, were they not?
Pardon?
They
They-
were,
Much bigger fines, right?
Oh, yeah,
Huge.
$2,100 a week,
$300 a day?
yeah.
So-
that's a rather steep fine. for
Yeah,
not
considering to what you're
submitting-
comparing it to.
Not submitting
Yeah.
an as-bill.
So, if I could amend my motion to first check with the finance director, Jen, as you
Just
suggested?
a third party, any third party.
Well,
Yeah,
if the third party is not an attorney, how would you want to accept the third party's answer unless they've,
I'm just
Definite.
looking for some outside
yeah.
party, Department of Revenue, the tax, somebody to give us a little guidance.
Okay, how's this sound? If, make the motion to check or fact verify with, and Sue can do this for us, with the,
Finance director?
finance director, and if you could make a call to DOR, and if you can't get anything in writing from those two situations, to then contact
Regarding statute
KP
of
Law.
limitations.
statute of limitations on collecting fines, and then, secondly, if the commission can set its own timetable for reasonable standard where it would say, beyond this date, the commission is not choosing to go back to
Donna
rehash old
wouldn't have that,
business.
would she?
I'm sorry?
I don't know, our finance director wouldn't have that, would she? She wouldn't know that.
I don't know, but if we check it
That
either
would
of
come
those
from the
places
AG.
and it doesn't cost us anything,
AG's
then
hotline.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good one.
so maybe the Attorney General's office and,
I'm just
DOR?
looking, yeah.
sure, no,
I'm
and
not looking to spend more money, I'm just looking for
Not either,
a reasonable reason, because no offense to Paul, but he's not a lawyer.
none of us are.
Right.
But we can set standards for the town, and that's what I think we should be
It
doing.
may not be that expensive to contact the same attorney
Okay.
again. The reason is with the Leonin property, we had to send him
We don't need
oodles
to,
of paperwork.
we don't,
And
we don't need to send
This
them,
is just a general
just a
question
general question.
Right.
about
That's it.
fines, and he may be able to just answer it off the top of
It's
his
not
head.
pertaining to any
I'll
property.
still do the Donna,
Yeah.
I'll do
Yeah.
cheap way.
Yeah,
Okay.
and if it still isn't making sense, then get,
And I
get
would,
And then,
simple
and then we'll
question.
we'll bring it back to the next meeting and discuss
I
it.
would ask him
And
about the
if we can,
the doctrine of latches and see
Okay.
if he has an
Yep.
opinion on that. I'm sure he's familiar with it, being an
Okay,
attorney.
if
I'll
we can,
second that.
general second? Okay.
Unless, did you second, Alex? No.
I think I
Oh,
seconded
yeah.
the first
Yeah.
prattle,
So
I
I'll-
didn't, yep,
I'll
so if you wanna
second
second
the
the third prattle, that's fine.
All right, so we have a motion on the table and a second to seek further knowledge from either an attorney or someone qualified.
Based off of the questions asked.
And that in mind, I'll ask again for a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye?
Should I get Peter?
And,
I
and
guess-
this subject matter can be brought back at the next meeting, hopefully, under guidelines and policies, not per an address.
Right.
Okay. Because we're looking to be specific, not specific to a property, we're looking to be general for everyone.
Okay. Well, what if that's not the case? Just saying.
Well, maybe
I'm just,
we'll have to get more information and see, so.
Okay.
All right, one more
Take your
motion to be made. Anybody like to make it?
make a motion, we adjourn. Next meeting,
A second on that, please. Yeah, next meeting, we get,
September 2nd, 2018, at 6:30 here.
oh, I got
Was it
September 10th.
2nd or 10th?
Did I say 2nd? I'm
Yeah,
sorry, 10th.
September
September
10th,
10th, 6:30 here.
6:30 here, right.
All in
All
favor?
those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, aye, well,
Very good.
finally out of here.
You want this back?